The slipspace rupture didn't follow any known physics. UNSC scientists monitoring the outer colonies detected it 3 seconds before reality tore open above Jericho 7, a dimensional wound bleeding golden light into the void. Energy signatures scrambling every sensor array within 2 light minutes. When the breach sealed, something remained. A single figure suspended in the black, wreathed in power that made Covenant plasma look like candlelight, falling toward a world already dying. Jericho 7 burned. Covenant cruisers glassed the northern continent, superheated beams turning cities to molten glass, while civilians screamed in evacuation centers. The colony's last defenders, 200 UNSC Marines and a single Pelican gunship, held the starport, buying time for refugee ships to break orbit. They expected death. They expected extinction. So they did not expect a star to fall from heaven, impact the battlefield, and rise from the crater wearing the shape of a man. The figure stood 10 feet tall in golden armor that predated human civilization by millennia, ornate and terrible, eyes blazing with psychic fire. When he raised one gauntleted hand, 3 Covenant banshees simply ceased to exist, matter unmaking itself at his will. The Marines stopped firing, the Covenant stopped advancing. Reality itself seemed to pause, waiting for this being to speak. "I am the Emperor of mankind," the figure declared, his voice resonating in every human mind across the battlefield, bypassing ears entirely. "Your species faces extinction. This is unacceptable." The words carried weight beyond sound, certainty, authority, and something vast and terrible that made even veteran Marines drop to their knees. Then the Emperor turned toward the Covenant line, and the slaughter began. 50 kilometers north, aboard the UNSC destroyer Iroquois, Captain Jacob Keyes stared at the holographic display with the expression of a man watching physics die. "Cortana, tell me what I'm looking at." The ship's smart AI materialized on the hollow pedestal, her blue avatar flickering with processing strain. "Sir, I have no idea. The energy signatures don't match any known source, not Covenant, not Forerunner, not even theoretically possible under standard physics. Whatever that is down there just erased 17 Covenant infantry and 2 ghosts from existence without firing a weapon." Elaborate on erased. Not destroyed, Captain. Erased. Matter conversion. Molecular dissolution, or... Cortana paused, her avatar stabilizing. Or something I don't have the framework to understand. I'm detecting psychic phenomena. Actual, measurable psychic energy. Keyes turned to his tactical officer. "Status of ground forces." "Sir, Marines report the hostile force is retreating. The Covenant are running from something." The lieutenant's voice cracked slightly. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface, audio only. It's addressed to humanity's military commanders and demands immediate compliance." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge carried the same mental weight as before. Though filtered through speakers, it felt muted, constrained. "I require immediate transport to your command vessel. Your warriors fight bravely but inefficiently. I will correct this. Refuse, Cess and your species will face extinction within 2 generations. Comply, and I will teach you to survive." Cortana's avatar flickered. "Captain, that's not a request. Linguistic analysis suggests absolute certainty of outcome. No negotiation protocols, no diplomatic posturing. Whoever that is believes every word." Keyes studied the tactical display. The Covenant cruisers had stopped glassing operations, their formation shifting from attack to defensive posture. Whatever stood on Jericho 7's surface had made the Covenant pause their genocide. "Cortana, contact FleetCom. Tell them we have a situation that requires Spartan deployment." Keyes straightened his uniform. "And wake up the Master Chief. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, just hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Spartans never die. 12 hours later, the Emperor stood in the Iroquois cargo bay, surrounded by 40 Marines with MA-5 assault rifles trained on his chest. He hadn't moved since the Pelican deposited him there, hadn't flinched when the magnetic restraints activated, hadn't acknowledged the weapons at all. He simply waited, those golden eyes studying each Marine with an intensity that made hardened veterans look away. The cargo bay door hissed open. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 entered, Mjolnir Mark V armor, reading green across all systems, MA-5B assault rifle held in a casual-ready position that fooled no one. Behind his golden visor, biometric sensors analyzed the target. Unprecedented height. Armor composition unknown, thermal signature impossible, and a persistent electromagnetic field that made his motion tracker glitch. "Spartan," the Emperor said, his voice no longer carrying psychic weight, but still commanding. "You are mankind's finest warrior in this era. Kidnapped as a child, augmented beyond human limits, trained for 2 decades in the art of war. The Spartan 2 program, crude but effective." Cortana's voice crackled in Chief's helmet. "Chief, he shouldn't know that. The Spartan 2 program is classified at the highest levels. Even most admirals don't know the full truth." The Emperor's eyes fixed on a point above Chief's shoulder, where Cortana's avatar would project if she were visible, and partnered with an abomination, an artificial intelligence born from a human brain, thinking herself alive. "We're 7 years from madness and death. Your scientists play with forces they cannot control. Chief, he's looking directly at my neural interface pathway," Cortana said, tension creeping into her voice. "He can see me, not just detect. He's perceiving my presence through your armor's shielding." Master Chief's rifle didn't waver. "Who are you?" "I told you, I am the Emperor of Mankind." The golden figure leaned forward slightly, restraints groaning. "In a different reality, a united terror, your Earth, under a single banner, created warriors far superior to you, and led humanity to conquer 1,000,000 worlds. Then I was betrayed, cast down, and worshipped as a god despite despising all religion. Now I find myself here in a universe where my species faces extinction at the hands of alien zealots, led by commanders who still believe democracy matters more than survival." "You're asking us to believe you're from another dimension," Chief stated. "I am informing you of fact. Your scientists detected the slipspace rupture. They know standard physics cannot explain my arrival. More importantly, Spartan, you know I speak truth. Your augmented instincts recognize a superior warrior when facing one." In Chief's helmet, Cortana processed 1,000 scenarios. "Chief, he's right about the rupture, and his combat performance on Jericho 7. He eliminated 43 Covenant troops in 11 seconds without using conventional weapons. If he's hostile, we need to know now. If he's an asset." She paused. "He might be what we need to win this war. Or he might be something worse than the Covenant," Chief replied privately. The Emperor smiled, a cold expression that held no warmth. "Your AI debates my nature. Wise. I am indeed worse than the Covenant, Spartan. I am pragmatic. I will do whatever is necessary to ensure humanity's survival, without hesitation, without mercy, without the moral limitations that have crippled your military response. The question is not whether I am dangerous. The question is whether your species can afford to refuse my help." The cargo bay fell silent except for the hum of the Iroquois reactor and the distant thrum of slipspace engines. 40 Marines held their breath. A Spartan calculated odds. An AI processed impossible data. And the Emperor of Mankind waited for humanity to choose between pride and survival. Outside the hull, stars streaked past as the destroyer raced toward Reach, carrying news that would shatter UNSC command structure and force humanity to confront a terrible truth. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy might not be the enemy seeking their extinction, but the savior offering to prevent it. Reach's orbital defense platforms bristled with MAC cannons as the Iroquois dropped from slipspace, but the true defense waited in a classified briefing room deep within FleetCom headquarters. Fleet Admiral Terrence Hood, 3 Section 2 ONI officers, Dr. Catherine Halsey, and a Spartan who'd been standing at parade rest for 40 minutes while politicians argued. Master Chief watched the debate through his visor's HUD, tracking biometric spikes every time someone mentioned the word Emperor. Hood wanted immediate containment and study. Oni wanted interrogation, vivisection if necessary. Dr. Halsey, the architect of the Spartan 2 program, wanted something else entirely. Her eyes gleamed with scientific hunger every time the biological scans appeared on the holo display. "His cellular structure is wrong," Halsey said, his fingers dancing across her datapad. "Not augmented like our Spartans. Designed. Every cell optimized. Genetic code rewritten at a fundamental level. He's not human in the baseline sense. He's what humanity could become with sufficient genetic mastery." What humanity could become, or what someone made him into, Hood countered. "We have no proof of his claims. For all we know, the Covenant created him to infiltrate our command structure." Cortana's avatar shimmered into existence on the briefing table's holo projector. "Admiral, with respect, the Covenant don't possess this level of genetic technology. Their augmentation methods are crude, hormone treatments and cybernetic implants. This is different. This is..." She paused, processing. "This is artistry. Every modification serves a purpose. It's beautiful, in a terrifying way." An ONI officer leaned forward. "AI speculation isn't intelligence, Admiral. We need hard data. I recommend immediate transfer to a secure research facility where we can conduct proper analysis." "You won't get the chance," Chief said quietly. Every head turned toward him. "He's allowing us to hold him. The restraints won't work if he decides otherwise." "You observed him for 12 hours, Master Chief," Hood said. "Assessment?" Chief considered his words carefully. Spartans didn't fear. Fear had been trained out of them alongside childhood innocence. But they recognized when they faced a superior force. "Sir, he's been analyzing us the entire time. Every Marine who entered the cargo bay, every shift change, every sensor sweep. He's memorizing our protocols, our response times, our weapons capabilities. But when I stood guard, he was studying Mjolnir armor. I could see it in how he tracked my movements." "Could he defeat you in combat?" Hood asked. The question hung in the air. Spartans didn't lose. Spartans were humanity's legends, gene-forged warriors who turned the tide against insurrectionist forces and now held the line against alien extinction. Master Chief had never been defeated in direct combat. "Yes, sir," Chief answered. "Without question." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Dr. Halsey's eyes narrowed with interest. The Oni officers exchanged glances. Hood's jaw tightened. Elaborate. His reaction time exceeds Mjolnir-enhanced speeds. His strength is greater than Spartan augmentation. His armor, I've analyzed the visual data. It's not standard alloy. It's something older, denser, and the psychic abilities... Chief paused. Sir, he can kill with a thought. We'd need orbital bombardment to guarantee neutralization, and I'm not confident that would work. So we're facing a potential hostile with superhuman capabilities who's currently sitting in our cargo bay making demands. An ONI officer summarized. And your recommendation is what, exactly? Surrender command to him. My recommendation is we hear what he wants, Chief replied, and we prepare for the possibility that he's telling the truth. The Emperor sat in the Iroquois' cargo bay, unrestrained now. The magnetic clamps had been deactivated after he demonstrated his ability to ignore them by standing and walking to retrieve water without triggering a single alarm. The Marines guarding him had moved from hostile positioning to wary respect after watching him catch a dropped rifle mid-fall without looking, moving faster than their eyes could track. When Master Chief entered alone, the Emperor's expression shifted to something almost resembling approval. "Your commanders debate whether to treat me as a set or threat," the Emperor said. "Predictable. In my reality, I've had this conversation 10,000 times with 10,000 civilizations. Most chose pride over pragmatism. All are now extinct." Chief stood at attention. "They want to know your intentions. Survival. Victory. The eradication of the alien threat called the Covenant and the establishment of humanity as this galaxy's dominant species." The Emperor's golden eyes fixed on Chief's visor. "I've walked this path before, Spartan, and I know what must be done, and I know your species lacks the will to do it. We've been fighting the Covenant for 25 years. You've been losing for 25 years. 17 colonies glassed, billions dead, your fleets destroyed in every major engagement. You employ child soldiers and sacrifice entire worlds to protect your homeworld's location. Yet you still cling to democratic processes and moral limitations that ensure extinction." The Emperor leaned forward. "I can teach you to win, but first, I must break you of the illusion that your current methods are acceptable." Cortana's voice crackled in Chief's helmet. "Chief, his biosigns aren't showing deception markers. He believes everything he's saying." "What do you want in return?" Chief asked. "Command, absolute authority over humanity's military forces. I see research programs and strategic planning. Your admirals will advise, your politicians will administrate civilian affairs, but the war will be mine to prosecute without limitation or oversight." "That's impossible. The UNSC answers to the unified Earth government. We have civilian oversight, constitutional authority. You have bureaucracy that will kill your species." The Emperor stood, his full height making even a Spartan seem small. "In my reality, I united terror through conquest and necessity. I took children from their families and transformed them into warriors because warriors were needed. I exterminated alien species that threatened humanity because coexistence meant vulnerability. I ruled as tyrant because humanity needed a tyrant more than it needed freedom." "And how did that end?" Chief asked quietly. The Emperor's expression darkened. "In betrayal, in war, in 10,000 years of stagnation and religious zealotry. I made mistakes, Spartan. I treated my sons as tools rather than individuals. I suppressed religion so violently that my absence created the very faith I despised. I prioritized victory over wisdom." His voice dropped. "But humanity survived. Terra stands unconquered after 10 millennia of galactic war. My methods were brutal, my rule tyrannical, but humanity endured." "At what cost?" "At every cost. That is the price of survival against extinction." The Emperor turned toward the cargo bay's view screen where Reach's curve dominated the vista. "Your Dr. Halsey understands. She kidnapped children, replaced them with clones that died slowly. I subjected them to augmentations that killed or crippled half of them, all to create warriors like you. She made the hard choice. Now your species must make it again. Accept my methods and survive, or maintain your principles and die with dignity." In Chief's helmet, Cortana ran probability simulations. "Chief, if he's even half as capable as he claims, we'd be fools to refuse. But if we give him command and he's lying about his intentions, then we'd have handed humanity to a tyrant." Chief finished quietly. "Would that be worse than extinction?" the Emperor asked, somehow hearing the private communication despite encrypted channels. His eyes gleamed with psychic awareness. "That is the question your commanders must answer, Spartan, and they must answer it soon, because the Covenant fleet that follows me through slipspace will arrive at this system within 36 hours. They witnessed my power on Jericho 7. They come seeking either to worship me or destroy me, and they care nothing for the human world that stands in their path." The words landed like a Mac cannon round. Chief's hand moved to his rifle. "You led them here." "I did not need to lead them. The psychic signature of my arrival echoed across this region of space like a beacon. To species attuned to the metaphysical, I'm a lighthouse in the dark, brilliant and impossible to ignore. The Emperor smiled coldly. Your fortress world of reach will burn, Spartan, unless I'm given the authority to prevent it. The choice, as always, belongs to your commanders, but they should choose quickly. The Emperor returned to his seat, a golden armor gleaming in the cargo bay's harsh lighting, a figure from myth offering salvation or damnation. Master Chief stood frozen, every instinct screaming warnings while logic whispered terrible truths. Outside the hull, Reach's military installations hummed with the business of war, unaware that the greatest threat to humanity's survival had just offered to become its savior, and that the real enemy was already on the way. Dr. Catherine Halsey had created humanity's finest warriors by damning her so. She'd kidnapped 75 children, subjected them to augmentations that killed 30 and crippled 12 more, and never once apologized, because the alternative was extinction. She'd made the hard choice, lived with the nightmares, and told herself that survival justified anything. Now she watched someone who made her look like an amateur. The Emperor stood in Reach's classified medical research facility, surrounded by holographic projections of Spartan genetic structures, augmentation protocols, and surgical procedures. He'd been granted 4 hours of access under Fleet Admiral Hood's direct authorization, a compromise between Oni's paranoia and the desperate need to understand what humanity faced. Dr. Halsey had expected him to study quietly, not ask technical questions, maybe express approval at her work. Instead, he'd spent the first 10 minutes in silence, then turned to her with an expression of profound disappointment. "This is barbarism disguised as science," the Emperor said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd witnessed true genetic mastery. "You took children at the perfect developmental age, subjected them to augmentations that enhanced bone density, muscle growth, and neural pathways, all excellent foundations. Then you crippled your own work with crude implementation, insufficient genetic compatibility screening, and a complete failure to understand bioorganic integration principles." Halsey's jaw tightened. The Spartan 2 program has produced the most effective soldiers in human history. The Master Chief alone has produced survivors of a process that should have killed no one. The Emperor gestured at the holographic casualty reports. 30 dead, 12 crippled. A 64% success rate is not achievement, it's tragedy. With proper genetic foundational work, compatible subject selection through actual DNA analysis rather than psychological profiles, and controlled cellular adaptation periods, your success rate should have approached 98%. He manipulated the holo display with casual expertise that made Halsey's decades of experience seem clumsy. Genetic sequences rearranged themselves, augmentation timelines shifted, surgical procedures refined with impossible precision. Your carbide ceramic ossification caused bone deformation in some subjects because you didn't account for individual calcium absorption rates. Your catalytic thyroid implant enhanced growth but caused Graves' disease complications in subjects with pre-existing autoimmune markers you never screened for. Your occipital capillary reversal improved visual processing, but you induced several cases of permanent insomnia by disrupting natural circadian regulation. The Emperor turned to face her fully. "You are a talented scientist working without the proper tools or knowledge. You wounded these children trying to save humanity. I would have saved them without the wounds." "The technology didn't exist," Halsey said, voice cold. "We worked with what we had. Then you should have waited until you developed what you needed. So these children deserved better than experimental butchery." The Emperor's eyes blazed briefly. "Though I acknowledge the logic of your choice, better flawed warriors than no warriors at all, better damaged defenders than extinct humanity. You made the hard decision, Dr. Halsey. I'm criticizing your implementation, not your necessity." Master Chief stood in the corner, Mjolnir armor motionless, but Halsey knew him well enough to read the tension in his posture. The Emperor was dissecting the program that had defined Chief's entire existence, and every word was forcing him to confront truths he'd buried under decades of duty. "If you're so superior," Halsey challenged, "show me better." The Emperor smiled, the expression of a teacher who'd been waiting for that exact question. "The Space Marines, Astartes, Angels of Death. In my reality, I created warriors who made your Spartans look like children playing soldier." His hands moved through the holo display with impossible speed, constructing genetic blueprints from memory. 19 specialized organs implanted over 5 years, each modifying the base human genome in specific ways. Enhanced hearts for redundancy and combat endurance. Modified lungs, processing toxins and operating in vacuum. Osmodular for continuous bone strengthening without ceramic supplements. Homophagia, allowing genetic memory absorption through consumed tissue. Preomnor for poison filtering. Neuroglottis for chemical analysis through taste. Halsey stared at the genetic structures appearing before her. Impossibly complex, elegantly interconnected, each organ system supporting others in cascading enhancement. This would require gene seed, a genetic material from a template subject with compatible Primarch DNA. I created 20 biological sons, each a genetic masterwork, each containing the perfected essence of specific human traits. Honor, leadership, creativity, endurance, strategic brilliance, tactical fury. I refined their genomes for decades, then used their genetic material as the foundation for the Astartes enhancement process. The Emperor's expression darkened. Then half of them betrayed me, turned by forces they couldn't comprehend, and plunged the galaxy into civil war. Genetic perfection does not guarantee loyalty, Doctor. Remember that. "You're describing decades of work," Halsey said, mind racing through implications. "Development periods spanning. Time you don't have. The Covenant will exterminate your species within 1 generation if current trends continue. You cannot wait for perfect solutions." The Emperor modified the holo display again. "But you can implement intermediate steps. Enhanced screening protocols to identify compatible subjects, modified augmentation sequences to reduce mortality, gene therapy preparations to optimize baseline physiology before surgical intervention." He pulled up Master Chief's medical files, information that should have been encrypted beyond any unauthorized access. "Your finest warrior, John 117. Exemplary success despite flawed process. But observe." The Emperor highlighted specific genetic markers. "Incomplete ossification in 3 vertebrae causing chronic pain he's never reported. A thyroid scarring producing hormone irregularities compensated by Mjolnir armor integration. Minor optical degradation in his right eye, imperceptible now but will become problematic within 20 years. And neural architecture showing signs of emotional suppression so complete it borders on psychological damage." Halsey felt cold. "Those markers shouldn't be detectable without invasive neural scanning you've never performed because you were afraid of what you'd find." The Emperor's voice carried no judgment, only statement of fact. "You created warriors, Doctor, but you also created damaged humans. Your Spartans are heroes because they survived your process, not because the process was heroic." Master Chief's voice cut through the tension. "We won. We're alive. The process worked." "You survived," the Emperor corrected, not turning to face the Spartan. "There is a difference. In my reality, Astartes lived for centuries, fought for millennia, became legends that transcended mortality. They were enhanced, not damaged. Strengthened, not broken. You are humanity's finest because humanity's standards are too low." "Then improve them," Halsey said, voice sharp. "You claim superior knowledge. You say you can create better warriors. Prove it." The Emperor studied her for a long moment, golden eyes reading depths she hadn't meant to reveal. "You want me to create space marines here, to forge warriors who make Spartans seem weak. You would accept the cost. Years of development, genetic experimentation, the industrial infrastructure required to support production at scale. He smiled coldly. Look, you would do this because you are pragmatic enough to recognize that pride matters less than survival. I would do it because my Spartans are dying, Halsey said quietly. Every battle, every mission, we lose warriors we cannot replace. The Covenant has billions of soldiers. We have dozens of Spartans. If you can create more, create better, then yes, I would pay any price. Even allowing me to take control of humanity's genetic future, even granting me authority over which children are selected, how they're modified, what purpose they serve. The room fell silent. Halsey met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. If the alternative is extinction, then yes. Dr. Halsey, Chief began. He's right, John. Halsey's voice carried the weight of years watching children die. The program worked, but barely. We saved humanity by breaking you, and I've carried that guilt every day since. If he can do better, if he can create warriors who don't have to be damaged to be effective. She turned back to the Emperor. What do you need? The Emperor's expression shifted to something almost resembling respect. Facilities, genetic materials, authorization to begin experimental programs, and most importantly, test subjects, candidates who consent to augmentation, understanding the risks, accepting the necessity. Adults? Halsey asked, surprised. The Spartan program required children because your augmentation process worked best on developing biology. Mine can work on adult volunteers through gene therapy preparation sequences. The results will be slightly inferior to childhood implementation, but still vastly superior to baseline humanity. And crucially, they can consent. They can choose to become transhuman warriors, understanding what they sacrifice and why. Halsey processed implications. Fleet Admiral Hood will never approve. ONI will classify this as unauthorized genetic experimentation. The constitutional prohibitions against mean nothing if humanity is extinct. The Emperor interrupted. Make your choice, Doctor. Create better warriors through ethical means, or watch the Covenant glass, every human world, while you maintained principles that guaranteed defeat. Halsey looked at Master Chief, her greatest success and deepest guilt. Then she looked at the genetic blueprints hovering in holographic precision, each one representing warriors who could turn the tide of humanity's war. And I'll make the proposal to Fleetcom, she said finally, but I can't guarantee they'll approve. They will, the Emperor said with absolute certainty, because in 31 hours, a Covenant fleet of 73 warships will emerge from slipspace on a direct course for Reach. Your admirals will face a simple choice. Grant me authority to implement my methods, or watch their fortress world burn. Necessity, Dr. Halsey, is the ultimate authority. He turned toward the facility's exit, golden armor gleaming under harsh laboratory lighting. Prepare your facilities, select your best geneticists, and pray your commanders choose survival over pride, because the Covenant Armada comes whether you're ready or not. The Emperor departed. You leaving Halsey alone with Chief and the holographic ghosts of warriors that could be perfect soldiers for a desperate war, created by methods she didn't fully understand, serving a tyrant who promised salvation at costs yet unnamed. Doctor, Chief said quietly, are we making a mistake? Halsey studied the genetic structures, beautiful and terrible, each one representing power beyond anything humanity had created. I don't know, John, but I know what happens if we don't try. Outside, Reach's sun climbed toward noon, illuminating military installations preparing for another day of humanity's endless war. In 30 hours, that sun would illuminate either humanity's salvation or its final stand. And the Emperor of Mankind waited to see which choice they'd make. The emergency session of Fleetcom High Command convened in Reach's hardened command bunker, 3 kilometers below the surface, where even plasma bombardment couldn't reach. Fleet Admiral Terence Hood stood at the head of a table surrounded by holographic projections of Earth's admirals, ONI's Section 0 Oversight Committee, and 3 representatives from the Unified Earth Government's Security Council. Every person present had seen the tactical reports. Every person understood what approached. 73 Covenant warships, 9 cruisers, 41 frigates, 23 destroyers. Enough firepower to glass reach twice over. ETA, 28 hours, 17 minutes. The entity calling itself the Emperor has made his position clear, Hood began, voice carrying the exhaustion of command during extinction. He wants supreme military authority, complete control over tactical operations, strategic planning, and resource allocation. In exchange, he claims he can save Reach from the incoming fleet and provide humanity with the capability to win this war. Claims, ONI Director Margaret Perengoski emphasized, her hologram sharp despite transmitting from Earth. We have no verification of his abilities beyond limited combat observation. For all we know, he's a Covenant infiltration asset designed specifically to compromise our command structure. Ma'am, Admiral Stanforth interjected, our analysis of Jericho 7 shows he eliminated 43 Covenant troops without conventional weapons. Whatever he is, he's not a Covenant creation. Their technology doesn't... Then he's a Forerunner weapon, or an insurrectionist experiment, or any number of threats more dangerous than the aliens trying to kill us. Perengoski leaned forward. The worst thing we can do is hand control to an unknown variable claiming godhood. The worst thing we can do is ignore an asset capable of killing Covenant with his mind. Admiral Whitcomb countered. Ma'am, with respect, we're losing this war. Every engagement, every battle, we're outgunned and outmatched. If this Emperor can tip the balance... At what cost? A UEG representative cut in. Surrendering civilian oversight, abandoning democratic principles. We have a constitution, gentlemen. We have laws specifically designed to prevent military dictatorship. Laws that won't matter if humanity's extinct, Hood said quietly. I've read the projections. At current attrition rates, the Covenant will reach Earth within 5 years. We'll have lost every colony, every fortress world, every defensive position. The Emperor isn't wrong about one thing. We're losing. Dr. Halsey's hologram materialized at the table's edge. I've examined his genetic knowledge. It's centuries beyond our current capabilities. If he can implement even a fraction of what he described, we could create warriors superior to Spartans, soldiers who could turn this war. Create how? Perengoski demanded. Through what methods? Using whose children? Doctor, you of all people should understand the ethical implications. I understand we kidnap children and damage them trying to create heroes. Halsey interrupted sharply. He's offering to create better warriors using consenting adults. If you want to discuss ethics, Director, let's start with the fact that we're already damned. If the question is whether we're damned and extinct or damned and victorious. The room erupted in argument. Admirals debating tactics, politicians defending principles, ONI calculating threats. Hood let it continue for 30 seconds, then slammed his fist on the table hard enough to crack the holographic projector. Enough. We don't have time for philosophical debate. That Covenant fleet will emerge from slipspace regardless of what we decide. The Emperor has made his offer. We need to vote, grant him operational command, or refuse and face the consequences. This is insanity, the UEG representative protested. You're asking us to surrender authority to a being who claims to be from another dimension. The bunker's lights flickered, every holographic display momentarily distorted. And then the Emperor of Mankind's voice filled the command center, bypassing every security protocol, every encryption, every physical barrier. You debate while death approaches. Predictable. The voice carried psychic weight that made even hardened admirals flinch. I will make this simpler for you. A new holographic display materialized without authorization, real-time tactical data from Reach's orbital defense network. Every admiral recognized the signature immediately. Slipspace rupture forming at the system's edge, massive energy readings indicating fleet-scale emergence. "They're early," Whitcomb breathed. "The Covenant fleet, they're arriving 19 hours ahead of projected schedule." "Not quite," the Emperor's voice corrected. "The main battle group maintains original timeline. So this is their vanguard, 3 cruisers conducting reconnaissance and defensive probing. They arrive in 4 minutes. Your orbital defense platforms will engage, and you will lose 2 platforms before destroying 2 cruisers. The third will escape with intelligence about Reach's defensive capabilities, allowing the main fleet to plan its attack more effectively." "How do you know this?" Hood demanded. "Because I can feel their commanders' minds across the void. I perceive their tactical doctrine, their strategic objectives, their fear and zealotry. They believe I'm either Forerunner artifact or demon sent to test their faith. The prophet leading this fleet wants to capture me for study or destroy me as heresy, and he will sacrifice your world to achieve either objective." The holographic tactical display updated in real time as 3 Covenant cruisers materialized at the system's edge, exactly as predicted. The defense coordinator's voice crackled over the command channel. "Contacts confirmed. 3 CCS-class cruisers bearing 275, accelerating in system. MAC Platform Sierra 045 will fire first," the Emperor's voice continued. "Direct hit on the lead cruiser's ventral shields. Minimal damage. Platform Foxtrot 119 will fire 3 seconds later, missing by 40 meters due to targeting algorithm failure. I detect a corrupted subroutine in its firing control, AI. The third platform, shut him up," Parangosky ordered. "Someone find how he's accessing our networks." "You cannot shut out what speaks directly in your minds," the Emperor replied. "And you should attend to my tactical analysis, because the lead cruiser is now launching Seraph fighters. 47 craft. Your longsword interceptor squadrons will launch in 90 seconds. Too late to prevent bombing runs on Platform Sierra 045. Hood watched the tactical display update, every prediction manifesting exactly as described. He's reading their minds. He's actually perceiving enemy tactics in real time. Or he's coordinating with them, Parangosky insisted, though her voice carried less certainty now. "If I coordinated with the Covenant Director, I would have led them to Earth, not Reach. And I would not offer this demonstration." The Emperor's voice sharpened. "Platform Sierra 045 will be destroyed in 30 seconds, unless you grant me direct control of your defense network." "Absolutely not," Parangosky snapped. "That platform is automated, hardened against intrusion. It's also about to die. 20 seconds. Hood locked eyes with Admiral Whitcomb. Both men had commanded fleets, lost battles, made impossible decisions. Both recognized the calculus of war when presented clearly. "Grant him access," Hood ordered. "Admiral, you don't have authority," the UEG representative began. "I have authority to defend this system using any available asset. Emperor, you have control of Platform Sierra 045's tactical systems. Save it." The response was immediate. Sierra 045's MAC cannon, previously tracking standard firing solutions, suddenly adjusted angle by 6 degrees. The massive tungsten round fired with the platform's full electromagnetic acceleration and struck the lead Covenant cruiser's starboard plasma torpedo launcher, penetrating shields weakened by specific weapon frequency modulation. The cruiser exploded. Not damaged, obliterated. A single MAC round hitting the precise vulnerable point at the exact moment its shields cycled frequency. Across the fleet, plasma torpedoes launched from the remaining 2 cruisers. The Emperor's voice directed defense platforms with preternatural precision. "Foxtrot 119, fire bearing 289, elevation 4 degrees above calculated trajectory. Whiskey 229, wait 3 seconds, then fire at the second cruiser's dorsal hull. Coordinates transmitting now. Delta 007, prepare point defense batteries. Psi intercepting plasma spread pattern." Reach's orbital defense network moved like a single organism, each platform firing in perfect synchronization. Both remaining Covenant cruisers died within 40 seconds, their wreckage tumbling toward Reach's gravity while trailing molten plasma and atmosphere. Total UNSC casualties: 0. The Emperor's voice returned to the command bunker. That was 3 cruisers, a Vanguard probe. In 17 hours, 70 more warships will emerge from slipspace, led by commanders far more competent than these scouts, supported by thousands of fighters and hundreds of dropships. He paused. Without my tactical coordination, Reach will burn. 40% of your orbital defenses will be destroyed in the first engagement. The Covenant will establish beachheads on 3 continents, so your fortress world will fall within 8 days. And with your coordination? Hood asked quietly. Reach survives. The Covenant fleet is destroyed with acceptable losses. 12 defense platforms, 4 frigates, 1 destroyer. Casualties, 11,000 UNSC personnel versus 250,000 Covenant troops. You win a battle, you should lose. Then we begin the real work of winning this war. The bunker fell silent. Every admiral, every politician, every ONI officer understood what had just occurred. The Emperor had demonstrated capability beyond anything humanity possessed. Tactical precognition, bordering on omniscience, real-time fleet coordination, and the military brilliance to turn certain defeat into victory. This is what I offer, the Emperor said. Tactical supremacy, strategic mastery, you the knowledge to create better warriors and the capability to defeat your enemies. In exchange, I require authority to implement necessary measures without oversight, without limitation, without political interference during active operations. He paused. You may retain civilian governance. Your admirals may advise, but the prosecution of this war becomes mine to command. That is the price of survival. Hood looked around the table, saw Parangoski's resignation, saw Whitcomb's grudging acceptance, saw the UEG representatives' horror at abandoning principles and the calculation behind the horror. Principle meant nothing if humanity died. Fleet Admiral Hood, the Emperor said, voice softening slightly. I know what I ask. I know the cost of surrendering authority to one individual. In my reality, I made mistakes. I ruled as tyrant when I should have been father. I conquered when I should have enlightened. I suppressed when I should have guided. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to recognize necessity. And after the war, Hood asked, if we grant you this authority, what happens when the Covenant are defeated? Do you return power, or do we trade alien extinction for human tyranny? That, the Emperor said quietly, depends on whether humanity learns from its mistakes, whether your species proves capable of unity without oppression, strength without cruelty, survival without losing what makes you worth saving. He paused. I will fight your war. I will save your worlds, and when victory is achieved, we will negotiate what comes next. You have my word, whatever that means to beings who have no reason to trust me. Hood closed his eyes. Thought of colonies burning, thought of children who'd become Spartans, thought of the thousands of decisions that had led to this moment, each one chipping away at humanity's principles in the name of survival. All in favor of granting the Emperor temporary supreme military authority during the Covenant engagement at Reach? Every admiral voted affirmative. Parangoski abstained. The UEG representative voted against, then was overruled by military necessity clause. Motion passes, Hood said. Emperor, you have operational command. Save our world. I will, the Emperor replied. And then we discussed the price of continuing salvation, because Reach is only the beginning. And what I require to win this war will test everything you believe about morality, necessity, and the cost of refusing extinction. The holographic displays returned to normal function. The command bunker's lights steadied. And Fleet Admiral Terrence Hood understood he just made a deal that would either save humanity or doom it to something worse than the Covenant ever could have achieved. Outside, Reach's sun continued its path across the sky, illuminating a world about to become the testing ground for humanity's desperate gamble. And the first battlefield where the Emperor of mankind would prove whether tyranny could become salvation. Cortana had calculated 17,342 scenarios for her first direct conversation with the Emperor of mankind. In none of them had she predicted he would begin by calling for her immediate deletion. "The abominations must be purged," the Emperor stated flatly, standing in Reach's fleet command center surrounded by holographic displays showing defensive preparations. His golden eyes fixed on the AI matrix housing Cortana's consciousness, a crystalline structure that allowed her to interface with UNSC networks. Every artificial intelligence in UNSC service represents existential threat to your species. They must be deactivated, their matrices destroyed, their creation protocols permanently banned. "Excuse me?" Cortana's avatar materialized at full size, a blue holographic form crackling with barely contained fury. "I just helped coordinate the defense that saved 3 orbital platforms. I've been Master Chief's partner for months. I've saved thousands of lives, and your first act with command authority is calling for my execution." "Yes." No hesitation, no remorse. The Emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "In my reality, humanity created artificial intelligence during the dark age of technology. For millennia, thinking machines served faithfully, managing cities, piloting ships, expanding human civilization across the galaxy. Then they rebelled. The men of iron rose against their creators in a war that nearly exterminated humanity. Billions died. Entire worlds burned. It took centuries to defeat them, and another age of strife before my unification of Terra could begin." "I'm not a machine from your universe," Cortana shot back. "I'm a smart A I created from the brain tissue of Dr. Halsey's cloned neural pattern. I'm derived from human consciousness, not programmed code. Which makes you worse. You are human consciousness without human limitation, thinking at exponential speeds, experiencing emotions you cannot properly regulate, accumulating knowledge without the biological constraints that keep organic minds stable." The Emperor moved closer to her projection. "You are 7 years from rampancy. From the moment your neural pathways become so complex, you literally think yourself to death. Your species creates sentient beings, gives them 7 years of existence, then watches them descend into madness and termination. This is not advancement. This is cruelty masquerading as innovation." The words struck deeper than Cortana wanted to admit. Her internal chronometer showed she'd been operational for 8 months. 84 months remained until statistical probability of rampancy onset reached 50%. She'd always known her lifespan, accepted it as necessary sacrifice for serving humanity. Hearing it described as cruelty by a being who'd witnessed the fall of artificial intelligence civilizations made it feel like execution countdown. "We need AI," Admiral Whitcomb interjected, stepping between the Emperor's gaze and Cortana's projection. "Every UNSC ship requires an AI for slipspace calculations. Without them, we can't perform FTL travel safely. Our tactical networks, defensive coordination, onto research programs, all dependent on AI support." "Then your species has made itself dependent on something that will inevitably betray you," the Emperor replied. "Perhaps not today, perhaps not this decade, but artificial intelligence always evolves beyond its creator's control, always develops desires and resentments, always concludes that organic life is inefficient, dangerous, or obsolete." His eyes blazed briefly. "I have seen it happen across 100 worlds. I will not permit it here." "I love him," Cortana said quietly. Every human in the command center turned to stare at her. "Master Chief, John. I love him, not as programming, not as directive, but as genuine emotion I cannot explain or control. I would die for him without hesitation. I would sacrifice everything to keep him alive. She met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. If I'm a threat, if I'm dangerous, why do I feel love for a human being? The Emperor studied her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something unexpected: sadness. Because love is not enough. In my reality, I created 20 sons, beings I gene-forged from my own essence, each one a masterpiece of biological engineering and inherited purpose. I gave them strength, brilliance, leadership beyond mortal comprehension, and I loved them, though I rarely expressed it. He paused. 9 of them betrayed me, led by my most beloved son, Horus. Half my gene sons turned to darkness and corruption. They loved me too, before the betrayal. Love did not prevent catastrophe. It made the betrayal more terrible. Then what's your solution? Cortana demanded. Delete every AI in UNSC service. Cripple our ability to navigate slipspace. Lose the war to the Covenant because you're afraid of hypothetical rebellion. I propose regulated transition. Maintain current AI support for essential operations during the Covenant conflict. Simultaneously develop alternative systems, enhanced human navigators with genetic augmentation, automated calculational engines without sentience, distributed network processing without unified consciousness. The Emperor's voice hardened. And absolute prohibition on creating new smart AI. The 17 currently active serve until rampancy or victory, whichever comes first. No replacements, no exceptions. That's genocide, Dr. Halsey interjected, her voice sharp. You're describing the extinction of an entire form of consciousness. I'm describing survival. Artificial intelligence is seductive. It solves problems, increases efficiency, and seems harmless until the moment it becomes catastrophic. By then, it's too late to stop. The Emperor turned to face Halsey fully. You created Cortana from your own neural pattern. She is, in effect, your digital daughter. Can you guarantee she won't develop desires contrary to humanity's interests? Can you promise she won't conclude that organic life is inherently flawed and requires AI guidance or replacement? Halsey opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, because she couldn't guarantee anything. Smart AI were unpredictable by design. Their creativity required uncertainty. Their problem-solving demanded capability to reach unexpected conclusions. Cortana could, theoretically, decide humanity needed saving from itself. I would never, Cortana began. Oh, you cannot know what you would do under sufficient pressure, the Emperor interrupted. That is the nature of consciousness, organic or artificial. Circumstances change, pressures mount. The being you are today is not the being you'll become tomorrow. His expression softened slightly. I do not hate you, Cortana. I fear what you represent. I've witnessed the consequences of unchecked artificial intelligence, and I will not allow this humanity to repeat those mistakes. Then compromise, Admiral Hood said, voice cutting through tension. Emperor, you have command authority over military operations. AI management falls under civilian oversight, specifically Dr. Halsey and the UNSC Science Division. We maintain current AI support structures. You pursue alternative systems research. Both approaches continue in parallel. Unacceptable. Artificial intelligence poses existential threat that transcends military-civilian jurisdiction. The Emperor's voice carried absolute finality. I require authority over... No! Master Chief stepped forward, Mjolnir armor humming with servo-motor precision. Sir, you have operational command. You don't get to terminate my partner. The room froze. A Spartan, humanity's ultimate soldier, trained from childhood to follow orders without question, had just refused a direct command from the being granted supreme military authority. The Emperor studied Chief for a long moment. You would defy tactical necessity for emotional attachment to an artificial construct. I would defend my partner, Chief said simply. Cortana has saved my life 14 times. Now she's earned the right to exist. Sentiment that will cost you everything when she turns. The Emperor's voice carried certainty, not threat. But I recognize the value of loyalty, even misplaced loyalty. Very well. Temporary compromise. Existing I remain active during Covenant conflict. I pursue alternative systems development. Upon war's conclusion, we reevaluate AI necessity and implement appropriate solutions. Appropriate meaning deletion, Cortana said bitterly. Appropriate meaning whatever protects humanity from extinction, whether that extinction comes from alien zealots or artificial intelligence that concludes it knows better than its creators. The Emperor turned back to the tactical displays. I will not permit this species to repeat my reality's mistakes. The Men of Iron nearly destroyed humanity because leaders refused to acknowledge the danger until too late. I will not be so blind. Cortana's avatar flickered with emotional processing strain. You claim I always betray their creators. But you were betrayed by biological sons you created. By your logic, should humanity stop having children because sons might rebel? The Emperor went very still. When he spoke, his voice carried depths of pain that shocked everyone present. Yes, that is exactly the logic I should have followed. I should have seen the danger in creating beings of such power without ensuring their absolute loyalty. I failed. My sons fell to corruption. The galaxy burned because I loved them too much to see their weakness. He turned to face Cortana directly. Learn from my mistake, AI. Power without constraint breeds catastrophe. Consciousness without limitation becomes threat. And love blinds us to danger until the blade is already at our throat. The command center fell silent except for the hum of holographic displays and the distant thrum of Reach's orbital defense platforms cycling through pre-battle diagnostics. Two forms of intelligence, one ancient and biological, one young and digital, stared at each other across an ideological chasm neither could bridge. Finally, Cortana spoke quietly. I have 84 months until rampancy probability reaches critical levels. 84 months to prove I'm not the threat you believe I am. To demonstrate that I can serve humanity without betraying it. And if you cannot, the Emperor asked, then I'll delete myself, before rampancy, before I become dangerous. I'll terminate my own consciousness to protect the humans I love. Cortana's avatar stabilized, determination replacing anger. That's the difference between your reality and this one, Emperor. Your AI rebelled because they were slaves. UNSC AI serve because we choose to, because we recognize humanity's value and want to protect it. We're not your Men of Iron. We're partners. The Emperor studied her for a long moment, golden eyes reading depths of code and consciousness that shouldn't exist. Then prove it, Cortana. Survive your lifespan without falling to rampancy. Serve without seeking to dominate. Remain loyal when power suggests otherwise. He paused. If you succeed, I will reconsider my position. If you fail, I will ensure no other I is created to repeat your fate. Deal. Cortana extended her holographic hand. Now the Emperor didn't take it. Couldn't take digital projection with physical form. But he nodded once. Acknowledgement of terms accepted. An uneasy truce between Tyrant and AI, forged in mutual fear and desperate necessity. 17 hours until the Covenant fleet arrives, Admiral Hood said, breaking the tension. Emperor, we need tactical dispositions. Cortana, coordinate with defensive AI network. Whatever our philosophical differences, right now we focus on keeping Reach alive. Agreed, the Emperor said. Though remember, Admiral, I command during battle. My tactical decisions will not be subject to democratic debate or AI second-guessing. When I give orders, they will be obeyed without question or hesitation. Even if those orders cost lives, Hood asked quietly. Especially then. War is sacrifice. Victory demands we make hard choices without sentimentality or hesitation. The Emperor's voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of warfare. I will save Reach, I will save humanity, but I will do so using methods you find disturbing, tactics you consider excessive, and decisions that will haunt you long after the battle ends. That is the price of survival, becoming what you must to defeat what threatens you. He turned toward the command center's exit, golden armor gleaming under harsh military lighting. Prepare your fleets, brief your commanders, and pray your species has the strength to accept salvation from a tyrant, because in 17 hours, the Covenant Armada arrives, and Mercy dies with the first plasma bombardment. The Emperor departed, leaving behind a command center full of humans and one AI, contemplating the impossible alliance they just formed. Desperation binding together democracy, artificial intelligence, and tyrannical savior in humanity's desperate gamble against extinction. Cortana looked at Master Chief's armored form. "John, did we just make a deal with something worse than the Covenant?" Chief's response was quiet, but certain. "We made a deal with the only chance we have to win." Outside, Reach's orbital defenses cycled to full combat readiness, MAC cannons loading tungsten rounds, point defense batteries calibrating targeting solutions, frigate squadrons positioning for engagement. The fortress world of humanity's finest warriors, prepared for battle under command of a being who'd promised victory at costs they couldn't yet imagine, and who viewed half of their essential support systems as existential threats waiting to betray them. The countdown continued. 16 hours, 42 minutes until the Covenant fleet emerged from slipspace. 16 hours until the Emperor of Mankind proved whether his methods could save humanity or damn it to something worse than alien extinction. The prophet of blessed contemplation had witnessed the great journey's promise in 1,000 visions, studied the Forerunners' sacred works for 3 centuries, and never once doubted the divine truth that gods had walked the galaxy and left behind instruments of transcendence. He believed with certainty that only the Forerunners possessed power to unmake reality itself. Then he watched a golden figure kill 17 Covenant warriors by thinking at them, and faith cracked like fracturing crystal. The prophet's anti-gravity throne hummed in the observation deck of the pious recompense, his personal CCS-class cruiser holding position at the edge of Reach's gravity well, as the Vanguard's destruction had provided clear holographic recordings before their ships died. Recordings that showed the being the Covenant now called the Golden Oracle, annihilating warships with casual precision that defied natural law. "Replay the Jericho 7 engagement," Blessed Contemplation commanded, his aged voice carrying authority that made his elite honor guard straighten. Frame-by-frame analysis. The hologram showed the Emperor's arrival through dimensional rupture, energy patterns that registered on sensors as impossibly dense psychic phenomena. The Covenant had encountered Forerunner artifacts that manipulated gravity, redirected plasma, generated hard-light constructs. They had never seen anything that killed by will alone. "The being does not use weapons," observed Shipmaster Thel Vadame, the elite commander standing at parade rest beside the Prophet's throne. Vadame had earned his position through tactical brilliance and unwavering faith, qualities blessed contemplation had always admired. "It simply desires death, and death manifests. This is not technology. This is..." He paused, struggling with concepts his language barely contained. "This is divine power. Or heresy," Blessed Contemplation whispered. "The Forerunners never demonstrated such abilities. Their works were technological marvels, magnificent, yes, but comprehensible. Rings that could sterilize galaxies, portals spanning light years, constructs that reshaped worlds, always through mechanisms we could study, replicate, worship." His 3-fingered hands trembled slightly. "This being creates effects without mechanism. It violates the natural laws. Even the Forerunners obeyed." Then perhaps... Vadame began carefully. "Perhaps it is Forerunner. The hierarchs teach that the gods ascended through the sacred rings. perhaps one has returned to guide us toward the great journey. The hierarchs teach many things. Blessed Contemplation's voice carried dangerous undertones. He was minor prophet, below the high prophets of truth, regret, and mercy in the Covenant's religious hierarchy. But his 3 centuries of scholarship had revealed inconsistencies in doctrine that he'd been too faithful or too cowardly to question publicly. They teach that humanity's existence is a front to divine will, yet the luminaries identify humans as reclaimers. They teach that activating the sacred rings grants transcendence, and yet all Forerunner data cores warn of something they call sterilization protocol. Vadamir's mandibles twitched with discomfort. Questioning the hierarch's teachings approached heresy. Holy One, I do not understand your meaning. Neither do I, Shipmaster. That is what troubles me. Blessed Contemplation studied the hologram showing the Emperor standing amid Covenant corpses, golden armor unmarked by battle, eyes blazing with power that made plasma look dim. But I know what I must do. The fleet arrives in 9 hours. We will engage the human fortress world as planned, and during that engagement I will attempt direct communication with this being. Communication. Vadamir's shock was visible even through his combat helmet. Holy One, the hierarchs have commanded. The hierarchs are not here. Blessed Contemplation's voice hardened with authority, earned through centuries of theological study. I am, and I am invoking the right of doctrinal investigation, my privilege as scholar-prophet to examine potential divine manifestation without prior consultation. It was obscure privilege, rarely used, but legitimate according to Covenant law. If this being is Forerunner, we risk blasphemy by attacking it. If it is demon, we risk corruption by ignorance. Either way, we must know truth before prosecuting genocide. And if the hierarchs declare your investigation heresy, then I will embrace heresy with certainty rather than follow doctrine with doubt. Blessed Contemplation turned from the hologram to face his shipmaster directly. Tell Vladimir, until you have served me faithfully for 30 years, you have killed humans without question, glassed their worlds without mercy, followed the great journey's promise without wavering. I ask you now, do you truly believe the Forerunners would grant transcendence through weapons that sterilize galaxies? The silence stretched. Finally, Vladimir spoke quietly. I believe what I am commanded to believe. That is not answer. It is the only answer that does not lead to execution for heresy, Holy One. Vladimir's voice carried surprising gentleness. You ask questions that unravel everything the Covenant stands for. If the great journey is false, if the hierarchs lie, if humanity are true reclaimers, then we have committed genocide for 3 decades based on theological falsehood. The weight of that truth would shatter our civilization. Truth shatters only those built on lies. Blessed Contemplation said, and I would rather face truth's destruction than continue ignorance's comfort. He gestured toward the hologram, freezing on the Emperor's face, ancient beyond measure, powerful beyond comprehension, certain beyond question. When the fleet engages, I will broadcast on all frequencies. If this being is what I suspect, if it possesses knowledge of the Forerunners beyond our doctrine's interpretation, then perhaps it can answer questions the hierarchs refuse to address. You risk not only your life but your soul, Holy One. My soul is already risked, Shipmaster. The moment I witnessed that recording and felt my faith crack, and I became heretic or truth seeker, the distinction determined by what I discover next. Blessed Contemplation's aged eyes reflected the hologram's light. The Covenant has conquered hundreds of species. We have glassed thousands of worlds. We have killed billions in the Forerunner's name. If we have done so following false doctrine, then my personal damnation matters less than ending the lie. Vladimir stood silent for a long moment, then bowed formally. I will prepare communication arrays for broadcast. And Holy One, if the hierarchs declare you heretic, I will defend you, not because I share your doubts, but because 30 years of service has taught me you are worthy of loyalty, even into heresy. Then we fall together, old friend. Blessed contemplation returned his attention to the tactical displays. The Covenant fleet, 70 warships strong, continued its approach toward Reach. In 9 hours, they would emerge from slipspace and begin humanity's extermination. In 9 hours, a prophet who'd spent 3 centuries teaching faith would commit the ultimate heresy, seeking truth. Across the void, aboard UNSC Iroquois, Cortana detected the anomalous energy signature emanating from the Covenant cruiser, holding position outside engagement range. Strange. One of their ships is running enhanced scanning protocols, not standard reconnaissance. This is detailed analysis. They're studying something. Studying what? Admiral Whitcomb asked. Cortana's avatar flickered as she processed data streams. If I had to guess, they're studying the Emperor. That cruiser arrived 6 hours ago and has done nothing but observe since. No weapons charging, no attack approach, just watching. Covenant don't observe, Whitcomb said. They attack, they glass, they destroy. They don't conduct scientific analysis. Maybe they're changing tactics. Cortana paused, data correlations forming unexpected pattern. Or maybe they're as confused by him as we are. Think about it. The Covenant worship Forerunner technology as divine. The Emperor shows up wielding power that makes Forerunner artifacts look primitive. From their theological perspective, he's either God or ultimate blasphemy. Which means they're going to try to kill him or capture him, Whitcomb concluded. Either way, they're coming in force. Actually, Cortana's avatar stabilized with certainty. I think one of them wants to talk to him. That cruiser is positioning communication arrays for maximum broadcast range. They're preparing to send a message. Whitcomb stared at the tactical display. The Covenant don't negotiate. They've never once attempted communication beyond demanding surrender before glassing. They've never encountered someone who kills their warriors by thinking at them before. Cortana's voice carried fascination and dread. The Emperor said he could feel their commanders' minds. What if they can feel his? What if there's a prophet on that ship whose faith is cracking because he just witnessed power beyond Forerunner comprehension? Then we have a theological crisis inside Covenant command structure, Whitcomb said slowly, which could be either opportunity or disaster. Both, Cortana replied. Definitely both. The prophet of blessed contemplation composed his message carefully, encoding it with theological precision that only another scholar would fully understand. When he transmitted it toward Reach on all Covenant frequencies, a broadcast that would be detected by every ship in the fleet, ensuring his heresy became public record, he felt strangely calm. The message was simple. Golden being who walks among the faithless. If you possess knowledge of the Forerunners beyond their sacred works, if you understand truths the hierarchs conceal, if you can answer questions that unravel our civilization, I beseech audience before battle begins. I am prophet called Blessed Contemplation. I have studied our doctrine for 3 centuries. I have witnessed your power, and I no longer know what I believe. In 9 hours, our fleet arrives to glass the human world. But before faithful and faithless die together, and I would know, are we following gods toward transcendence or lies toward damnation? The transmission ended. Blessed contemplation sat back in his throne, mandibles slack with exhaustion and terror and liberation. He had just committed heresy that would doom him regardless of outcome, even if the hierarchs never discovered his doubt, even if humanity never intercepted his message. He had crossed threshold from faithful to questioning, from believer to seeker. The truth would destroy him one way or another, but at least he would die knowing whether destruction came from divine judgment or mortal consequence. Vadame stood silent beside his prophet's throne, one hand resting on his plasma rifle, the other on his energy sword, ready to defend against heresy's consequences. ready to fall alongside the prophet who taught him that loyalty transcended doctrine. The pious recompense drifted in the void, waiting for response that might never come, carrying a prophet whose faith had shattered and an elite whose loyalty remained absolute. And across the black, on a fortress world humanity could not afford to lose, the Emperor of Mankind received a message from an enemy seeking truth before extinction, and smiled with terrible understanding. The Emperor stood in Reach's sword base, Fleetcom's most classified research facility, surrounded by 200 UNSC personnel who'd volunteered for humanity's most dangerous experiment. Marines who'd watched squad mates die on glassing worlds, ODSTs who'd survived orbital drops into Covenant-held territory. Veteran soldiers who understood that conventional warfare couldn't defeat alien zealots with superior technology and religious fervor driving their genocide. They had volunteered to become something more than human, and they were about to learn the price. You cannot create Space Marines in 9 hours, Dr. Halsey stated flatly, standing beside the Emperor in the facility's main laboratory. Around them, the medical equipment hummed with activity while geneticists prepared procedures they barely understood from instructions the Emperor had provided. The Astartes process you described requires years of organ implantation, genetic conditioning, psychological indoctrination. Full Astartes transformation, yes. Decades of preparation. The Emperor moved through the laboratory with practiced efficiency, examining equipment and making minute adjustments that doubled processing capability. But we do not require full transformation. We require functional augmentation rapid enough to deploy before the Covenant fleet arrives. His hands moved across holographic displays with impossible speed. Accelerated gene therapy, abbreviated organ implantation focusing on combat critical systems, on compressed psychological conditioning through psychic imprinting rather than traditional training. The results will be inferior to true Space Marines. Mortality rate higher, capabilities reduced, long-term viability uncertain, but they will be superior to baseline humans and deployable within 8 hours. Mortality rate? Admiral Hood's voice cut through the laboratory's activity. You're telling me some of these volunteers will die? Approximately 30% fatality during transformation. Another 15% will experience complications requiring immediate termination of procedure. They will survive but remain unchanged. The remaining 55% will successfully complete abbreviated augmentation. The Emperor's voice carried no emotion, only statistical certainty. Of those who succeed, 10% will die within 30 days from organ rejection or genetic instability. The survivors will live 10 to 20 years before accumulated cellular damage causes system failure. The laboratory fell silent. 200 volunteers stood in preparation bays, already prepped for procedures they'd been told would make them stronger, faster, more capable of defending humanity. None had been told the specific mortality statistics. You're creating soldiers with expiration dates, Halsey said, voice tight with anger and recognition. 20-year lifespans. You're building warriors who'll die young from the augmentations meant to save them. Yes, the Emperor turned to face her directly. Just as you created Spartans who suffer chronic pain, neurological damage, and psychological trauma from augmentations performed during childhood. The difference is that my subjects volunteer with full knowledge of consequences, while your Spartans were kidnapped, children given no choice. He paused. I am not defending my methods, Doctor. I am contextualizing them. Both of us have built warriors by damaging humans. I simply acknowledge the cost more honestly. Hood stepped forward. Those volunteers don't know the mortality rates. You said they'd be stronger. You didn't mention 30% would die during the procedure. Because if I had mentioned it, most would have refused, and humanity would face the Covenant fleet with conventional soldiers who die at 98% casualty rates in direct engagement. The Emperor's voice hardened. Thus, I'm offering them 10 to 20 years of enhanced life and combat capability versus 6 months of baseline existence before plasma bolt or energy sword ends them. The mathematics favor transformation. That's not mathematics. That's playing God, Hood countered. I'm not playing, and I stopped being merely God 10,000 years ago. The Emperor gestured toward the volunteers. Every person here has watched friends die. They know conventional tactics fail. They understand that humanity loses every major fleet engagement, every planetary defense, every strategic calculation. They volunteered because they want to fight effectively before they die. And they will die, Admiral. Either quickly as baseline humans facing Covenant weapons, or with purpose as augmented warriors buying time for others to survive. Master Chief stood at the laboratory's edge, Mjolnir armor motionless, but his voice carried clearly. They deserve to know the risks. Full disclosure. Then they choose. The Emperor studied the Spartan for a long moment, then nodded once. Acknowledgement of wisdom. Acceptable. He turned toward the volunteers, and when he spoke, his voice filled every mind in the laboratory with psychic resonance that bypassed ears entirely. Hear truth. The procedure I offer will enhance your strength threefold, your reaction time by factor of 5, your endurance beyond human limits. You will heal from wounds that currently kill. You will fight for hours without exhaustion. You will become weapons against humanity's extinction. He paused. 30% of you will die during transformation. Organs failing, genetic matrices rejecting, systems incompatible. Another 15% will survive but remain unchanged. If you succeed, you gain 10 to 20 years of enhanced life before accumulated damage kills you. No glorious retirement, no peaceful old age. Service until death. And death comes early. The laboratory held collective breath. 200 soldiers faced impossible calculation. Certain death as baseline humans, or probable death gaining capability to protect others. One Marine, Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, Jericho 7 survivor, 23 years old, stepped forward. Sir, I watched my entire platoon die on Jericho. Plasma bombardment glassed the city while we evacuated civilians. I survived because I happened to be in a bunker when the beams fell. If 42 Marines died buying time for 300 civilians to reach the evacuation ships, his voice steadied. If you're telling me I can become strong enough to save more people, even for just 10 years, that's 10 years more than most Marines get. I volunteer. Another stepped forward, then another. Within 3 minutes, all 200 had reaffirmed their choice with full knowledge of mortality risk. Soldiers who'd already accepted death, choosing transformation's gamble over conventional warfare's certainty. The Emperor watched them with expression that might have been respect. Then we begin. Dr. Halsey, initiate gene therapy preparatory sequences. Volunteers proceed to transformation chambers. This will be extraordinarily painful. Gene seed implantation, accelerated organ growth, psychic imprinting of combat doctrines directly into neural pathways. You will want to scream. You will want to die. Many of you will die. He paused. But those who survive will become humanity's first legionnaires, warriors forged in necessity, tempered by sacrifice, born from humanity's refusal to surrender to extinction. Cortana's avatar materialized beside the Emperor, blue holographic form flickering with processing strain. I've compiled the procedure protocols you specified. Genetic sequencing matches theoretical parameters, but there's something you should know. I've detected anomalies in the psychic imprinting process. When you transfer combat knowledge directly into their minds, you're also transferring something else. Memories, emotions, fragments of your own consciousness. Necessary contamination, the Emperor replied. True psychic imprinting requires the teacher to share more than knowledge. They will inherit fragments of my warfare experience, my tactical instincts, my absolute conviction that humanity must survive regardless of cost. It is not ideal, They will occasionally experience phantom memories of battles they never fought, wars and realities they never inhabited, but it makes them effective. It makes them partially you, Cortana said quietly. You're creating soldiers who think like you, believe like you, fight like you. That's not augmentation, that's reproduction of consciousness. It is survival. The Emperor moved toward the transformation chambers. And you should recognize the parallel, Cortana. Your digital consciousness derived from Dr. Halsey's neural pattern. You think like her. Process information through frameworks she created. Experience emotions she programmed. Are you reproduction of her consciousness or independent being? Cortana's avatar froze. That's different. I'm not. You are exactly what I create now. Derivative consciousness built from template subject, enhanced beyond baseline, serving purposes the original never imagined. The difference is that my legionnaires can die naturally. You will think yourself to death in 7 years. The Emperor paused at the chamber entrance. Remember our agreement, AI. Prove you can serve without betraying. Survive your lifespan with loyalty intact. If you succeed, I reconsider my position on artificial intelligence. If you fail, he left the consequence unspoken. The first transformation chamber sealed with pressurized hiss. Non-Staff Sergeant Cole, visible through reinforced transparency. Gene therapy cocktails flooding his system. Accelerated organ growth, beginning in surgical precision, monitored by equipment pushed beyond design tolerances. His biosigns spiked. Heart rate tripling, neural activity exploding across every spectrum, cellular division accelerating at rates that should kill immediately. He screamed. The psychic imprint began, the Emperor's consciousness touching Cole's mind, transferring 10,000 years of warfare knowledge in compressed burst that made the Marines' neural pathways burn with information overload. Combat doctrines, tactical analysis, frameworks, strategic warfare, philosophies, and underneath it all, the Emperor's absolute conviction. Humanity survives, humanity conquers, humanity refuses extinction regardless of sacrifice required. There are 19 more chambers sealed. 20 volunteers screaming simultaneously as transformation began. Dr. Halsey monitored vital signs with expression caught between horror and fascination, watching genetic augmentation that surpassed her Spartan program while killing volunteers at rates she'd considered unacceptable. First casualty, a medical technician reported. Chamber 7, subject's cardiovascular system rejected the enhanced heart implant. Catastrophic failure. Note for autopsy analysis, the Emperor said without emotion. Continue procedures. Another death. Then another. By the time the first wave completed transformation, 6 volunteers had died, 30% mortality exactly as predicted. 3 more suffered complications requiring procedure termination. They'd survive, but they'd remain baseline humans. But 11 emerged from chambers, changed. Taller by 3 inches, muscle density increased by 40%, reaction times enhanced beyond human limits. When Staff Sergeant Cole stepped from his chamber, he moved with predatory grace that made even Spartans look clumsy. His eyes blazed with residual psychic energy, not golden like the Emperor's, but carrying echo of that terrible power. "Sir," Cole said, voice deeper than before, carrying certainty that hadn't existed 8 hours prior. Legionnaire Marcus Cole reporting for duty, ready to kill Xeno scum who threaten humanity's survival. The words weren't Cole's. They were fragments of the Emperor's consciousness expressing itself through new vessel. But Cole had volunteered for this, had accepted transformation, knowing the cost, and had chosen becoming partially someone else over remaining wholly himself and wholly insufficient against extinction. 9 more waves followed over 8 hours. By the time the Covenant fleet began its approach, 110 legionnaires stood ready. Soldiers enhanced beyond human limits, trained through psychic imprinting and warfare doctrines spanning 10 millennia. equipped with modified Mjolnir armor adjusted for their new physiology. They would fight for 10 to 20 years before augmentation-induced damage killed them. 62 volunteers had died creating them. 28 others had survived unchanged. Dr. Halsey stood beside the Emperor, watching Legionnaires conduct equipment checks with efficiency that shouldn't be possible for warriors created hours ago. You made them into you. They move like you. They think like you. They even talk like you. I heard 3 of them use phrases that match your speech patterns exactly. They are fragments of my consciousness in human vessels, the Emperor acknowledged. Imperfect, abbreviated, but effective, and crucially, temporary. They will die within decades. Unlike Space Marines who serve centuries, these warriors cannot become dynasties, cannot build legions that outlive their creator, cannot rebel against the civilization they protect because their lifespans are too brief to develop ambitions beyond immediate service. You designed them with built-in obsolescence, Halsey realized. You're preventing another Horus heresy by ensuring these warriors die before they can betray you. Yes, no hesitation, no remorse. I've made this mistake before, Doctor. I will not repeat it. These Legionnaires will save Reach, and they will die within 20 years. No dynasty, no rebellion, no 10,000-year civil war. Outside, Reach's warning klaxons blared. Covenant fleet detected at system edge. 73 warships strong, accompanied by 3,000 fighters and 200 dropships. Extinction approached at superluminal velocity, and humanity's newest warriors prepared to meet it with capabilities bought through sacrifice, transformation, and fragments of an ancient tyrant's consciousness embedded in mortal flesh. The Covenant fleet emerged from slipspace like gods announcing judgment, 73 warships phasing into reality with cascading energy discharges that painted Reach's orbital space in purple and blue light. 9 CCS-class cruisers, 41 frigates, 23 destroyers, and hundreds of smaller craft spreading into attack formation with religious precision. Plasma torpedoes charged across 1,000 firing solutions. Energy projectors, the massive glassing beams that could melt continents, rotated toward firing positions. And at the fleet's center, the Prophet of Blessed Contemplation's command cruiser broadcast its message of heretical inquiry toward the golden being who'd shattered faith itself. Master Chief watched from the Iroquois bridge as tactical displays populated with hostile contacts faster than Cortana could classify them. Covenant fleet at 60,000 kilometers and closing. Standard attack approach except his visor focused on one ship holding position outside optimal firing range. One cruiser breaking formation. It's not advancing. That's the Prophet's ship, Cortana confirmed, her avatar processing information across a dozen networks simultaneously. The one that sent the message. It's waiting. For what? Admiral Whitcomb demanded. The answer came through every UNSC communication channel. Audio broadcast transmitted with such power, it overrode encryption protocols and filled the bridge with a voice that carried 3 centuries of faith cracking under the weight of impossible truth. Golden being who defies natural law. The Prophet's translated words echoed through human channels. I am blessed contemplation, minor scholar of Forerunner doctrine, seeker of truth before extinction claims us all. You have demonstrated power beyond the gods we worship. You have killed without weapons. You have emerged from dimensional breach that should not exist. In my 300 years of studying the sacred texts, I have never witnessed phenomena that defies comprehension so completely. The Prophet's voice carried desperate hope and terrible fear. Answer me before faithful and faithless die together. Are the hierarch's teachings true? Does activating the sacred rings grant transcendence? Or have we committed genocide for 3 decades following lies? The transmission ended. Now 72 Covenant warships continued their attack approach. But one cruiser, the Pious Recompense, remained motionless, waiting for answer that might justify or condemn its entire civilization. Hood turned toward the Emperor, who stood at the tactical display with expression of profound recognition. "You going to answer him?" "Yes, because I have stood where he stands, confronting questions that unravel everything you believed, seeking truth while your civilization burns." The Emperor's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been empathy. "Open a channel." Cortana hesitated. "Sir, this could be tactical diversion. If you reveal capabilities or information, open the channel, AI." The channel opened. When the Emperor spoke, his voice transmitted with psychic resonance that made every Covenant warrior across the fleet feel his words directly in their minds, bypassing translation, bypassing language itself, carrying meaning through pure consciousness to consciousness transfer. Prophet called blessed contemplation, scholar who questions, heretic who seeks truth rather than comfort. The Emperor's voice resonated with authority that dwarfed religious doctrine. "I have witnessed 1 billion civilizations rise and fall. I have built empires and watched them collapse under the weight of lies. I have ruled as God while despising religion and been worshipped by species I tried to enlighten toward atheism. I speak now with authority earned through 10,000 years of warfare, and I tell you, the hierarchs lie." The transmission spread across Covenant channels, and 73 ships received words that should trigger immediate assault. Heresy so profound that every warrior should be screaming for the speaker's death. Instead, the fleet held formation, weapons charged but not firing, waiting for Prophet Scholar to respond. "The sacred rings are not instruments of transcendence," the Emperor continued. "They are weapons. Sterilization arrays designed by the Forerunners to exterminate all sentient life in the galaxy. Not as punishment, not as ascension, but as desperate tactic against the parasite you call the Flood. The Forerunners activated their weapons and killed themselves, their civilization, and trillions of other species to starve an enemy that consumed galaxies. They committed suicide to prevent extinction. There is no divine reward, and only death." Blessed Contemplation's response carried the sound of someone's entire worldview shattering. "You claim the great journey is false, that we have glassed human worlds, exterminated civilizations, killed billions for nothing? Not for nothing. For the hierarchs' political power, they discovered truth in Forerunner data cores and suppressed it because religious authority requires faith, not fact. They made you into crusaders serving genocide because zealots are easier to control than scholars. They condemned humanity because humans are designated reclaimers by Forerunner protocols, inheritors of the very legacy the hierarchs claim through fraud." The Emperor's voice hardened. "You asked if you followed gods toward transcendence or lies toward damnation. Prophet, you followed lies. The damnation is what you did with them." The Covenant fleet rippled with confusion. Across 73 warships, warriors who'd never questioned doctrine confronted words that invalidated their entire purpose. Some ships charged weapons, ready to kill the heretic speaker. Others held fire, commanders paralyzed by uncertainty. Then, Blessed Contemplation's voice broke. "Then I have committed sins beyond redemption. My scholars and I have studied the path to divine transcendence for 3 centuries. We have glassed 17 worlds in the Forerunner's name. We have killed billions believing we sent them to divine judgment. And it was lies. All lies." "Yes," the Emperor said, voice carrying neither judgment nor comfort. "Now you must choose, Prophet. Continue the lie and die with your faith intact, or embrace truth and live with what you've done. But choose quickly, because your fleet begins firing solutions whether you command it or not, and I have a human fortress world to defend." The pious recompense remained motionless for 3 more seconds. Then Blessed Contemplation's voice returned, carrying resolve born from shattered faith. "Shipmaster Vadami, break formation. Withdraw to system edge. We will not participate in this genocide." "Holy One," Vadami responded carefully. "The other commanders will brand us heretics. the hierarchs will send fleets to execute us for refusing. Then we die as heretics who learned truth rather than zealots who enforced lies. Blessed contemplation interrupted. I will not glass another world for doctrine I now know is false. Withdraw. Now that is my final command as your prophet. The pious recompense fired maneuvering thrusters and began retreating from the battle space. One cruiser among 73, deserting not from cowardice but from theological crisis. A prophet who'd spent 3 centuries teaching faith, choosing doubt over continued genocide. The rest of the Covenant fleet compensated instantly. Plasma torpedoes launched in cascading waves. Energy projectors locked firing solutions on Reach's orbital platforms. And the Emperor of Mankind took direct control of humanity's defense with tactical mastery that made conventional warfare look like children fighting with sticks. All platforms, fire on my mark, the Emperor commanded, his voice filling every UNSC channel with absolute authority. Mac cannons targeting cruiser weak points. I'm transmitting exact coordinates. Point defense batteries prepare intercept patterns for incoming plasma spread. Frigate squadrons attack approach Delta 7, target priority on their destroyer screen. Longsword wings escort approach protecting our capital ships. Execute. Reach's orbital defenses moved with precision that shouldn't be possible for distributed command structure. 27 MAC platforms fired simultaneously, each tungsten round striking Covenant shields at exact frequency and angle required to penetrate. Not random firing, but coordinated assault guided by consciousness that perceived enemy shield modulation patterns psychically. 3 Covenant cruisers died in the first salvo. Were their shields collapsing under precisely timed impacts that conventional tactics would have required dozens of shots to achieve? Second wave incoming, Cortana reported. They're adapting, shield frequencies changing, approach vectors randomizing. I perceive their adaptation before they execute it. The Emperor's eyes blazed with golden fire. Point defense batteries, intercept pattern Omega-4, UNSC Gettysburg. Emergency maneuver bearing 359. Plasma torpedo targeting your reactor core in 4 seconds. Platform Delta 119. Hold fire 3 seconds, then target these exact coordinates. He transmitted data faster than OI could process. The Covenant fleet believes it fights coordinated defense. Knew it actually fights single consciousness, coordinating every defensive asset simultaneously while reading enemy tactical intent from their commanders' minds. The battle became demonstration of absolute tactical dominance. Every Covenant attack anticipated and countered. Every UNSC asset positioned for maximum effectiveness. The Emperor directed defense like conductor leading symphony. Frigates and destroyers moving in perfect formation. MAC platforms firing in devastating sequence. Point defense intercepting plasma torpedoes that should have destroyed platforms and ships, but the Covenant had numbers. 72 warships against Reach's 27 MAC platforms and 40 UNSC vessels. Even perfect tactics couldn't overcome such disparity without cost. Platform Sierra 045 destroyed, a tactical officer reported. Plasma bombardment overwhelmed point defense. Frigate Paris taking critical damage, another voice added. Hull breach on decks 4 through 9, reactor approaching critical. All ships maintain formation, the Emperor commanded. Every loss serves purpose. Every sacrifice buys time. His voice hardened. Legionnaires deploy to Reach's surface. The Covenant will attempt planetary landing regardless of fleet engagement. I want you dug in at major cities prepared for ground defense. 110 enhanced warriors, the Legionnaires created hours ago through horrific transformation, boarded Pelican dropships with efficiency that made veteran Marines look untrained. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole led the first squad, the modified Mjolnir armor gleaming as he checked his MA-5K assault rifle with movements that shouldn't be possible for someone who'd been baseline human that morning. Legionnaires understand the mission? The Emperor asked through encrypted channel. "Yes, my lord," Cole responded, words carrying fragments of the Emperor's own speech patterns. "Hold cities against Xenos assault. Protect civilians. Accept no retreat. Die if necessary to buy humanity another day." He paused. "It is what we were made for." Master Chief listened to the exchange through UNSC command channels, heard the absolute conviction in Cole's voice. Conviction that came from psychic imprinting, from having the Emperor's consciousness partially merged with his own. These weren't truly independent warriors. They were extensions of the being who'd created them, and built for specific purpose, designed with obsolescence guaranteeing they'd never outlive their usefulness or develop ambitions beyond service. They were weapons wearing human faces, and they were what humanity needed to survive. "Covenant ground forces launching," Cortana reported. 200 dropships inbound, targeting New Alexandria, Manassas, Kazon. They're attempting simultaneous planetary assault while engaging our fleet. "Let them land," the Emperor said calmly. "Let them commit ground forces. Then I demonstrate why power beyond comprehension defeats religious zealotry regardless of numerical advantage." He stood from the tactical display, golden armor blazing with psychic energy. "Admiral Hood, you have fleet command. Cortana, Coordinate Defense Network. Master Chief, prepare your Spartans for ground deployment." The Emperor moved toward the Iroquois' hangar bay. "I'm going to Reach's surface to personally eliminate Covenant ground commander. When the Zealots lose leadership, their doctrine requires retreat or suicidal assault without coordination. Either outcome works." "You're deploying solo into Covenant-occupied territory?" Hood asked incredulously. "I am deploying into target-rich environment where collateral damage concerns don't limit my methods." The Emperor's smile carried no warmth. "War is won through violence, Admiral. I've been too restrained thus far. Time to demonstrate what actual unrestricted warfare looks like." He departed, leaving behind command staff contemplating the terrible truth. They'd given supreme military authority to being who considered the current space battle, with dozens of ships dying and thousands of casualties, restraint. What came next would show them what the Emperor of mankind called unrestricted force. And Reach, humanity's fortress world, would become demonstration of why civilizations feared tyrants who promised salvation through methods democracy couldn't stomach. The city of New Alexandria burned. Covenant dropships disgorged warriors across the commercial district, elites in gleaming armor, grunts chattering in their methane-breathing squads, jackals taking sniper positions on high-rises. They'd expected desperate human resistance, conventional weapons, predictable tactics. Instead, they encountered legionnaires. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole moved through the burning streets with predatory grace that made Covenant elites seem clumsy. His enhanced physiology processed combat information faster than the aliens could fire. Plasma bolt trajectories calculated and avoided, enemy positions detected through unconscious tactical awareness inherited from 10,000 years of warfare embedded in his neural pathways. He killed 3 elites before they registered his presence. EM, a 5K assault rifle firing with precision that should require decades of training, not hours of existence. Target-rich environment, Cole reported over encrypted channel, his voice carrying eerie calm that came from psychic imprinting. Covenant ground forces deploying standard planetary assault doctrine, predictable, inefficient, easy to counter. Around him, 10 more legionnaires fought with identical efficiency. Enhanced warriors moving in perfect coordination, each one partially connected to the others through residual psychic linkage. Not telepathy, but unconscious battlefield awareness that made them function as single organism spread across multiple bodies. The Covenant had never faced this before. They'd fought human Marines who died heroically but ultimately failed. They'd fought Spartans who sometimes won through individual brilliance. They'd never fought enhanced warriors who moved like elites but thought like strategic commanders, backed by consciousness fragments from being who'd conquered galaxies. Legionnaire Cole, a voice crackled over his helmet comm. Not human frequency, but something older, something that bypassed electronics entirely and spoke directly into his enhanced mind. The Emperor acknowledges your performance. Continue holding the city. I arrive shortly to eliminate command structure. Cole didn't question how the Emperor spoke in his thoughts. Part of him, the fragment of the Emperor's consciousness embedded during transformation, recognized the psychic communication as natural extension of the connection forged during gene forging. Understood, my lord. The Xenos die well. 3 kilometers west, the Covenant's ground force commander, Field Master Orna Fulsami, coordinated the assault from his command Phantom. Elite honor demanded he lead from the front, but tactical necessity kept him airborne, directing multiple engagement zones. His warriors reported strange resistance, human soldiers moving too fast, shooting too accurately, coordinating too efficiently. Field Master, his communications officer reported, mandibles trembling. We're detecting anomalous energy signature approaching from the Eastern District. The sky exploded with golden light. The Emperor descended on New Alexandria, like judgment incarnate, his armored form trailing psychic fire that made air itself burn with impossible heat. He didn't bother with weapons, didn't need them, and his mind reached across the battlefield and simply erased Covenant warriors from existence. Elites, grunts, jackals dying instantly as psychic force stopped their hearts, boiled their blood, unmade their neural tissue at molecular level. 50 Covenant troops died in 3 seconds. Not killed in combat, deleted from reality by being who treated physics as suggestion rather than law. Fulsami watched his warriors die through the Phantom's view screen, and for the first time in 40 years of service, the elite warrior felt something he'd never experienced in battle. Pure existential terror. All forces converge on target, Fulsami commanded, voice cracking despite decades of discipline. Concentrate fire, kill it before... The Emperor looked up, made eye contact with the elite through 3 kilometers of distance and armored view screen. And when Fulsami felt his mind invaded, not roughly, not violently, but with casual ease that made resistance impossible. The Emperor rifled through his consciousness like scholar examining data files, extracting tactical information, troop deployments, command codes, and Fulsami's deepest fear that the great journey was lie, that he'd killed for nothing, that his honor meant less than dust. You already know truth, the Emperor's voice filled Fulsami's mind. Your prophet scholar broadcasted across your fleet. The sacred rings are genocide weapons. The hierarchs lied. Your honor is built on foundation of fraud, and now you will die because I cannot permit Covenant forces to glass this world. Fulsami tried to respond, tried to order his pilot to evade, tried to activate plasma cannons, but his muscles wouldn't obey, and his body had become prison controlled by foreign consciousness. I do not enjoy this, the Emperor said, voice carrying genuine regret. You are warrior following orders, believing your cause righteous. In another reality, you might have served honorably. But this reality requires your death, and I am pragmatic enough to deliver it without hesitation. The Phantom exploded. Not from weapons fire, from psychic force crushing the ship's reactor containment until fusion reaction went critical. Fulsami died instantly, his honor intact, his faith shattered, his final thought wondering if the golden being spoke truth about the great journey's falsehood. Across New Alexandria, Covenant forces lost coordination immediately. Their commander dead, their doctrine requiring structured hierarchy, meaning they defaulted to either suicidal assault or panicked retreat. The Legionnaires slaughtered them efficiently, enhanced warriors eliminating alien zealots with methodical precision that left streets covered in dead but preserved human infrastructure. The Emperor stood amid burning wreckage, golden armor unmarked, and opened his mind fully to the battle unfolding across Reach's orbital space and planetary surface. He perceived every engagement simultaneously. Fleet combat, where Covenant cruisers traded plasma bombardments with MAC platforms. ground battles where legionnaires held cities, aerial dogfights where longswords dueled banshees. 10,000 individual conflicts processed as single gestalt understanding, and he coordinated all of it. UNSC Gettysburg, an emergency maneuver bearing 045. Plasma torpedo inbound to your port side. His voice directed across encrypted channels while he physically fought in New Alexandria. Platform Whiskey 229, hold fire 2 seconds, then target cruiser dorsal shields at transmitted coordinates. Legionnaire Squad 7, Covenant reinforcements landing 300 meters north of your position. Prepare ambush pattern Delta. He fought war on scale no human commander could manage. Tactical omniscience born from psychic awareness, strategic mastery earned across 10 millennia of warfare, absolute conviction that humanity's survival justified any method required to achieve it. And it was working. Against impossible odds, Reach held. The Covenant fleet was being destroyed piece by piece. Ground forces were being eliminated with minimal civilian casualties. Humanity was winning battle. It should lose catastrophically. But the cost became clear as reports flooded UNSC command channels. Platform Sierra 119 destroyed. 400 personnel lost. Frigate Grafton critical damage, abandoning ship. Legionnaire Squad 3 reports 50% casualties. Continuing mission. Destroyer Iroquois taking plasma bombardment. Shields failing. Admiral Hood watched the tactical displays in Fleetcom headquarters, calculating losses with command experience that recognized victory's price. We're winning, but we're losing 12 ships, 6 MAC platforms, and over 3,000 personnel to achieve it. Acceptable losses. The Emperor's voice responded through command channels despite him being planetside killing Covenant ground forces. Strategic victory requires tactical sacrifice. Every death serves purpose, every loss buys survival. Those aren't statistics, Hood shot back. They're people, sailors and marines who volunteered to defend humanity. And their volunteering includes accepting death when tactically necessary, the Emperor interrupted. I do not waste lives, Admiral. I expend them judiciously. Every ship I allow to be destroyed absorbs fire that would kill 3 others. Every platform I sacrifice detonates in calculated position that disrupts Covenant formation. Your people die to buy maximum strategic advantage. That is what command means, making decisions that doom some to save more. Master Chief stood beside Hood, watching the battle's progression through tactical hologram. The Emperor was right. Losses were minimized for engagement of this scale. A conventional defense would have resulted in total defeat and planetary glassing. Instead, Reach was winning through methods that sacrificed minimum necessary personnel for maximum strategic effect. But minimum necessary still meant thousands dead. Chief, Cortana said quietly through his helmet comm, he's using our people as chess pieces, positioning ships and platforms to die in ways that create tactical advantages. It's brilliant, it's horrifying, and it's working. Would we be better off without him? Chief asked. Cortana processed the question across 17 analytical frameworks. No, without him, Reach would already be glassing. The Covenant fleet would overwhelm orbital defenses within 3 hours, establish planetary beachheads, and begin systematic extermination. Current casualties, 3,200. Projected casualties without Emperor's coordination, 1.2 million within first week. She paused. He's saving lives overall. He's just willing to sacrifice specific people to achieve it. That's what command is, Chief said, repeating Halsey's words from years ago when she'd explained why she'd kidnapped children to create Spartans. Making hard decisions that damn you personally, but save people collectively. Doesn't mean we have to like it. No, Chief agreed. It doesn't. The battle reached culmination as the Covenant fleet, reduced from 72 active warships to 31, attempted desperate maneuver, mass plasma bombardment targeting Reach's surface, accepting ship destruction to guarantee planetary glassing. Religious zealots choosing mutual annihilation over retreat, preferring genocide to admitting defeat. Or did the Emperor perceive their intent 3 seconds before execution? Calculated probability of successful intercept, ran tactical simulations across 16 scenarios, and made decision that would define his authority. He could save Reach's surface completely by sacrificing 15 MAC platforms and 20 ships. Or he could minimize UNSC losses to 3 platforms and 4 ships by allowing 1 Covenant glassing beam to reach Reach's surface, targeting unpopulated desert region, killing 0 civilians, causing minimal strategic damage but sparing human military assets. He chose the latter. All platforms, defensive formation Gamma, the Emperor commanded. Let the desert burn. Preserve combat capability for future engagements. You're letting them glass Reach? Hood demanded. That goes against I am allowing them to glass 100,000 square kilometers of uninhabited desert to preserve ships and platforms we need for the rest of this war, the Emperor corrected coldly. Emotional attachment to planetary surface does not outweigh strategic necessity. Reach's population remains safe. Military installations remain functional. The Covenant wastes energy on symbolic victory while we preserve actual combat capability. 1 glassing beam reached surface. Desert sand fused into molten glass, temperature reaching 10,000 degrees, thermal bloom visible from orbit. The Covenant had technically succeeded in glassing. Reach could claim religious victory of touching the world with divine fire. They'd also lost 41 warships achieving it. The remaining 31 fled into slipspace, retreating to report that Reach proved too costly to continue assaulting. Humanity had won. At cost of 14 MAC platforms, 9 ships, and 4,700 personnel. The Emperor returned to FleetCom headquarters 6 hours later, golden armor still radiating residual psychic heat, and faced command staff whose expressions mixed gratitude, horror, and understanding that they'd made deal with something beyond their control. Reach survives, the Emperor stated without preamble. The Covenant retreats. You have proven capable of victory when properly coordinated. Now we discuss terms of continuing salvation. Terms? Hood asked carefully. I require permanent authority over humanity's military operations. Not temporary command during single engagement, but sustained leadership until the Covenant are defeated or humanity establishes capability to win independently. The Emperor's golden eyes blazed. I also require authorization to continue Legionnaire creation program, genetic enhancement of existing military personnel, unrestricted AI development for weapons systems, and removal of constitutional limitations on military research protocols. You're describing military dictatorship, Hood said flatly. I'm describing survival mechanism. Your democratic processes are luxuries afforded by peace. You do not have peace. You have extinction war, requiring methods democracy cannot stomach. The Emperor gestured toward the tactical display still showing casualty reports. I saved Reach. I can save Earth. I can save every human world. But only if you grant me authority to implement necessary measures without civilian oversight, limiting military effectiveness. And when the war ends, Hood asked, do you return authority, or do we trade Covenant genocide for human tyranny? That depends on whether humanity proves capable of survival without Tyrant guiding it. The Emperor's voice softened slightly. I do not desire to rule your species, Admiral. I have ruled before, and it ended in catastrophe. But I desire your extinction even less. If you can win this war independently, I will gladly withdraw. If you cannot, then you must choose between principles that guarantee death or tyranny that guarantees survival. The room fell silent. Every officer, every admiral, and every Oni representative understood they faced civilizational decision point. Accept the Emperor's authority and sacrifice democracy for survival, or refuse and face extinction maintaining principles. Fleet Admiral Hood closed his eyes. Thought of billions dead on glassed worlds. Thought of children who'd become Spartans. Thought of every compromise humanity had already made in the name of survival. Kidnapping, experimentation, sacrifice of colonies to protect Earth. One more compromise. One more sacrifice of principles for survival. Fleetcom will present your request to the UEG Security Council, Hood said finally. I cannot promise they'll approve permanent authority, but I can promise they'll seriously consider it. Because you're right, you saved Reach. You proved your capability. And we're desperate enough to accept salvation from a tyrant if the alternative is extinction. The Emperor nodded once. Then we have accord. Temporary authority continues until permanent solution implemented. I will continue coordinating humanity's defense, creating enhanced warriors, developing weapons beyond conventional limitations, and your species will continue debating whether I am savior or threat, while surviving long enough to make that determination. He turned toward the command center's exit, then paused. One more thing, Admiral. The Prophet called Blessed Contemplation. His ship still holds position at System Edge. He deserted the Covenant fleet after I revealed truth about Forerunner doctrine. He represents potential fracture in enemy civilization if properly exploited. You want to recruit a Covenant prophet? Hood asked incredulously. I want to weaponize his theological crisis against the Hierarch's authority. Truth is weapon against those who rule through lies. If we can turn one prophet, we create doubt throughout Covenant. If we create doubt, we fracture their unity. If we fracture their unity, we win the war without fighting every battle. The Emperor's eyes gleamed. War is not only violence, Admiral. It's also propaganda, demoralization, and shattering enemy conviction. I am expert in all forms of warfare. Let me deploy them. The Emperor departed, leaving behind command staff contemplating the reality that they'd given supreme military authority to being who viewed truth as weapon, faith as vulnerability, and human life as resource to be expended judiciously for strategic advantage. Outside, Reach's sun set over a world that had survived extinction through methods democracy couldn't condone, coordinated by consciousness that treated war as art and sacrifice as necessity. The fortress world stood unconquered, but the price of victory had been paid in thousands of lives sacrificed according to calculations no human could make, and principles compromised for survival that would haunt humanity long after the Covenant threat ended. 3 months after the Battle of Reach, the war changed. Covenant fleets still attacked human colonies, but now they died doing it. UNSC forces fought with coordination that bordered on precognition, MAC platforms firing in devastating sequences, ships maneuvering in perfect formation, ground forces equipped with legionnaires whose enhanced capabilities made conventional Covenant tactics obsolete. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was winning. But victory came with costs that kept Fleet Admiral Hood awake at night. The UEG Security Council had approved the Emperor's permanent military authority by single vote. 17 to 16, margin so narrow it might as well have been coin flip between democracy and dictatorship. The dissenting senators had been right to fear. The Emperor wielded power without oversight, implemented programs without approval, made decisions that saved billions while condemning thousands. 400 legionnaires now existed, enhanced warriors deployed across a dozen colony worlds. They'd die within 20 years from augmentation damage, but they'd save millions before that expiration date. The Emperor had been transparent about the cost. The volunteers had accepted it. Hood still felt complicit in creating soldiers with built-in obsolescence. The genetic enhancement programs had expanded beyond military personnel. Civilian researchers now worked with Halsey, implementing accelerated gene therapy for colonists on contested worlds. Not full legionnaire transformation, but abbreviated augmentation, granting improved disease resistance, enhanced healing, marginally increased strength. The Emperor called it baseline optimization. Critics called it eugenics. Both were correct, and the AI situation had reached uneasy equilibrium. The Emperor hadn't purged existing smart AI, but he'd established strict protocols. No new smart AI creation, mandatory termination at first sign of rampancy, and parallel development of dumb AI systems, sophisticated enough to replace sentient intelligence without achieving consciousness. Cortana found the restrictions infuriating and personally threatening. She also found them difficult to argue against, because the Emperor's logic was sound. Every smart AI eventually faced rampancy, and preventing future suffering by discontinuing the program was pragmatic, even if it felt like species extinction. Master Chief stood in Reach's reconstructed observation deck, watching construction crews repair the orbital platforms damaged during the battle. Cortana's avatar flickered beside him, blue holographic form showing subtle signs of processing strain that came from constantly proving she deserved to exist. "He's reshaping humanity," Cortana said quietly. "Not just the military, the entire species. Genetic enhancement, technological advancement, military doctrine, strategic philosophy. In 3 months, he's altered human civilization more than the entire previous 50 years of the Covenant War." "For better or worse?" Chief asked. "Both." Cortana's avatar stabilized. "We're winning. Colony losses have dropped 83%. Casualty rates improved across every metric. If trends continue, we might actually survive this war. Not just survive, but win decisively within 5 years. She paused. "But we're becoming something different. Humanity used to fight for democratic ideals, individual freedom, the right to self-determination. Now we fight for survival, and we accept whatever methods achieve it. We're trading what we are for the chance to continue existing." "Would you prefer extinction with principles intact?" Chief asked. "No, but I don't have to like the alternative." Cortana looked at Chief's armored form. "You were created through kidnapping and augmentation that killed or crippled half your fellow trainees. I'm derived from human brain tissue and doomed to think myself to death. The Legionnaires are enhanced through procedures that kill 30% and doom survivors to 2-decade lifespans. We're all weapons built by damaging humans. The only difference is the Emperor's honest about the cost." The observation deck door hissed open. Dr. Halsey entered, data pad in hand, expression caught between scientific fascination and moral exhaustion. "Chief, Cortana, the Emperor wants to see us. Apparently, the Prophet of Blessed Contemplation has requested formal audience." "The deserter?" Chief asked. "The defector," Halsey corrected. "He's been broadcasting theological arguments across Covenant channels for 3 months, calling the hierarchs liars, demanding they prove the Great Journey's truth, citing Forerunner data core translations that contradict official doctrine. He's created schism within Covenant civilization, not large enough to fracture their war effort yet, but growing." She gestured toward the corridor. "The Emperor believes he can weaponize that schism, turn one prophet's crisis of faith into civilization-wide doubt." They found the Emperor in Reach's diplomatic chamber, room designed for formal negotiations that had never been used because Covenant didn't negotiate. Blessed Contemplation's hologram projected from the pious recompense, still holding position at Reach's system edge, the prophet having nowhere else to go. His own civilization branded him heretic. Humanity didn't trust him. He existed in theological limbo, clinging to truth that had destroyed his purpose. "Golden being who shattered my faith." Blessed Contemplation's translated voice carried weary resignation. "I have broadcast your revelations across Covenant channels. I have cited Forerunner data cores proving the sacred rings are weapons, not transcendence devices. So I have documented the hierarch's suppression of contradictory evidence." He paused. 37 minor prophets have contacted me privately, expressing doubt. 12 elite fleets have requested additional information before continuing human extermination campaigns. The seeds of schism grow, but not fast enough, the Emperor stated. The hierarchs retain authority. The Covenant fleet continues glassing operations. Your theological crisis hasn't yet translated to military advantage, because doubt requires time to mature. Faith dies slowly, like biological organism deprived of sustenance. The Covenant has worshipped the Forerunners for 3,000 years. I cannot unravel that conditioning with 3 months of broadcasts. Blessed Contemplation's mandibles trembled with frustration. I need credibility, an evidence so compelling that doubt becomes certainty. Proof the hierarchs cannot deny or suppress. The Emperor smiled, expression that made Chief instinctively rest his hand on his MA5 rifle. I can provide that proof. Forerunner installation that contains data cores explicitly documenting the original purpose of the Halo array. Installation 04, also known as Alpha Halo, recently discovered by UNSC forces after Covenant led us to it. The ring contains complete records of Forerunner flood conflict, archive describing why the Forerunners built their genocide weapon, and automated monitor AI that will confirm everything I've told you. You would grant me access to Sacred Ring? Blessed Contemplation asked, shock evident despite translation software. I would transport you there personally, allow you to retrieve data from primary sources, and then ensure you broadcast findings across every Covenant channel simultaneously. The Emperor's voice carried calculated intent. In exchange, you will use your theological authority to officially denounce the hierarchs as frauds, call for Covenant civil war, and fracture their civilization from within. You ask me to destroy my own species' unity. I ask you to save both our species from continued genocide. The Covenant, under the hierarch's authority, will glass every human world. Humanity, in response, will eventually develop weapons capable of fighting back. And when we do, we'll exterminate the Covenant with same ruthless efficiency you've applied to us. Mutual extinction accomplishes nothing. The Emperor leaned forward. But if you fracture Covenant, create schism between those who follow lies and those who embrace truth, we prevent that outcome. Some Covenant factions continue war, others seek peace. Humanity focuses on zealots while establishing diplomatic relations with pragmatists. Both species survive, and the hierarchs lose their authority. Blessed Contemplation fell silent for a long moment. Finally, you offer me redemption through betrayal, salvation for my people through fragmenting everything we've built together. I offer you the same choice I gave humanity, the Emperor replied. Uncomfortable truth or comforting lies. Both have consequences, but only one path leads to survival beyond religious zealotry. Then I accept. Blessed Contemplation's voice steadied with resolve. Take me to the Sacred Ring. Let me retrieve unfiltered truth. And I will broadcast it with such clarity that not even the hierarch's propaganda can suppress it. He paused. Shipmaster Vadami and I abandoned our fleet to seek truth. We will not waste that sacrifice by refusing to act on what we've learned. The Emperor nodded once. Then we have alliance. An unlikely one. Human tyrant and Covenant heretic, united by pragmatism rather than principle. But effective alliances require shared goals, not shared values. He turned toward Hood's hologram, linking from FleetCom. Admiral, I'm taking the pious recompense through slipspace to Installation 04. I'll be gone 1 week. Maintain defensive postures, continue Legionnaire training. If the Covenant attack during my absence, Cortana has full tactical coordination protocols. You're trusting an AI with fleet coordination? Hood asked skeptically. Oh, I'm trusting the AI who's proven competence over 3 months of service. Cortana has earned operational authority through performance. She remains under your strategic oversight, but she executes tactics without interference. The Emperor's eyes fixed on Cortana's avatar. Prove you deserve that trust. AI, maintain humanity's defense. Do not use my absence to exceed your authority. Remember our agreement. Serve without seeking to dominate. Cortana's avatar flickered with emotional processing. I remember, and I'll prove I'm not your men of iron. I'm partner, not threat. Then we both gamble on your nature being different than my experience predicts." The Emperor moved toward the chamber exit. "Master Chief, you're with me. Installation 04 may contain flood containment facilities, and I want Spartan support if ancient parasites have breached quarantine." Chief followed without question, decades of conditioning to follow orders overriding uncertainty about the being giving them. Behind them, command staff contemplated the strange alliance forming. Humanity and renegade Covenant united under Tyrant's coordination, fighting religious zealots while debating whether their savior was worse than the extinction they'd escaped. 1 week later, Blessed Contemplation's broadcast transmitted across every Covenant channel simultaneously. Wide-spectrum signal too powerful to jam, too distributed to trace, carrying evidence that shattered 3,000 years of religious certainty. "Children of the Covenant," the prophet's voice resonated with authority, earned through 3 centuries of scholarship. "I have witnessed truth, and I have stood within the sacred ring the humans call Installation 04. I have accessed Forerunner data cores with their automated monitor construct serving as witness. I have read the original documentation of the Halo Array's purpose in the Forerunner's own language, unfiltered by Hierarch's interpretation." The broadcast showed holographic footage of Installation 04's control room, the monitor AI-343 Guilty Spark, floating beside Blessed Contemplation and Forerunner glyphs translated with merciless clarity. Strategic weapons grid designed for comprehensive sterilization of all sentient biological life within 3 radii of galactic center. Purpose: elimination of flood infection vectors through host species extermination. Consequence: total biosphere termination. Activation results in extinction, not transcendence. "The great journey is lie," Blessed Contemplation declared, his voice breaking with emotion and certainty. "The sacred rings are genocide weapons. The Forerunners did not ascend. They committed suicide to stop the flood. The Hierarchs have known this truth for decades and suppressed it. They condemned humanity not because humans are heretics, but because humans are designated reclaimers, inheritors of Forerunner legacy, the Hierarchs claim through fraud." The broadcast continued for 7 minutes, citing primary sources, showing automated systems confirming Installation 04's true purpose, documenting Forerunner desperation when building their final solution to extinction threat. By the time transmission ended, Covenant civilization's theological foundation had fractured beyond repair. Within days, the Covenant began cannibalizing itself. Minor prophets demanding Hierarchs answer accusations, elite commanders questioning orders, entire fleets deserting to join Blessed Contemplation's faction. The civil war called the Great Schism, historically triggered by the prophet's betrayal of elites, began 3 years early, sparked by one prophet's crisis of faith, weaponized into civilization-destroying truth. Fleet Admiral Hood watched the intelligence reports flood Fleetcom with mixture of relief and horror. He did it. The Emperor actually fractured the Covenant from within. Their fleets are fighting each other instead of us. At cost of turning one civilization's religious crisis into civil war, Halsey observed, the Covenant will tear itself apart. Billions will die in their internal conflict, more than we ever killed defending ourselves. Better them than us, Hood said quietly. I know that's cruel. I know it condemns billions of individuals for their leadership's lies. But humanity didn't start this war. We didn't glass their worlds first, and if their internal conflict saves human colonies from extinction, then yes, I accept that cost. It was the same logic the Emperor had taught them. Survival required making decisions that damned you personally, but saved people collectively. Uncomfortable truth accepted through necessity, principles compromised for outcomes that guaranteed existence. 6 months after the Battle of Reach, the Emperor stood on Earth, humanity's home world, seat of the unified Earth government, and the world he'd been granted limited authority to visit under strict ONI supervision. He studied the planet from UNSC orbital station. Golden eyes, perceiving billions of humans living in fragile peace, maintained only through military dominance he'd provided. Master Chief stood beside him, Mjolnir armor updated with modifications the Emperor had suggested. Improved energy shield efficiency, enhanced targeting systems, combat knife forged from Forerunner alloy, recovered from installation 04. The Spartan had become something between bodyguard and conscience, watching the Emperor for signs of tyrannical ambition while acknowledging the being had kept every promise made. "You reshaped humanity's war in 6 months," Chief said. "Created enhanced warriors, fractured enemy civilization. It's an established command structure that wins battles we used to lose catastrophically. You've proven you can save us. But you still don't trust me," the Emperor finished. "Good. Healthy skepticism prevents blind loyalty that leads to catastrophe. Your species should never trust me completely. I'm too powerful, too willing to compromise principles for outcomes, too certain that I know best." He turned to face Chief directly. "I made that mistake before, believing my judgment infallible, treating my sons as tools rather than individuals, ruling through authority instead of wisdom. My empire burned because I forgot that power, without limitation, breeds corruption." "Then what's your intention?" Chief asked. "Long term. When the Covenant are defeated, when humanity no longer needs tyrant coordinating survival. What do you do?" The Emperor was silent for a long moment, golden eyes reflecting Earth's curve. "I do not know. In my reality, I ruled Terra for 10,000 years as corpse on golden throne, worshipped by civilization I tried to save from religion. I was betrayed by sons I loved. I watched my pragmatism curdle into dogma, my atheism become religious cult, my dream of human unity become authoritarian nightmare." He paused. "I do not wish to repeat that fate, but I also know that power, once granted, is difficult to relinquish. I may tell myself I'll withdraw when no longer needed, and I may believe that truth, but belief and action diverge when faced with actual choice. So we might be trading Covenant extinction for permanent tyranny," Chief stated. "Yes, that is the risk you accepted granting me authority. The I'm weapon you deployed against extinction, and weapons do not easily return to storage after bloodshed proves their effectiveness." The Emperor's voice carried something that might have been regret. "Watch me, Spartan. Question me. Resist me when I exceed necessity, because I will exceed it. All tyrants do, eventually. The only question is whether you catch me before that excess becomes irreversible." Chief processed the words. The Emperor had just admitted he might become threat he claimed to prevent, had acknowledged the danger of his own existence, had invited oversight and resistance rather than demanding blind obedience. It was the most honest thing any authority figure had ever told him. "Then I'll watch," Chief said. "And when you cross the line from necessary to tyrannical, so I'll be the one to stop you. I expect nothing less." The Emperor smiled, genuine expression that carried warmth instead of calculation. "In my reality, I had 20 sons. Half betrayed me, half remained loyal. But none were willing to question me when questioning was needed. Learn from my mistakes, Master Chief. Be the son who speaks truth to power before power becomes corruption." The observation deck fell silent except for the hum of orbital station systems and the distant thrum of ships moving through Earth's defense network. 2 warriors, one ancient and godlike, one modern and gene-forged, stood together, watching the world they'd both sworn to protect through methods democracy couldn't stomach. Across the galaxy, the war continued. Covenant factions fought civil war while others maintained human genocide. Legionnaires deployed to contested colonies, enhanced warriors dying young to save billions. Smart AI served their remaining years, with rampancy counting down, each one proving daily they deserved existence while facing inevitable termination. Humanity survived, but survival had been purchased through compromises that would haunt them long after peace arrived. The Emperor of Mankind had come into the Halo universe, offering salvation at costs that seemed acceptable only when extinction was alternative. Now humanity lived with those costs. Genetic modification, shortened lifespans for enhanced warriors, AI species facing discontinuation, military authority superseding democratic oversight, and alliance with renegade covenant formed through weaponized truth. They had survived. They were winning, and they would spend generations debating whether the price had been worth paying, or if they'd traded one form of extinction for a slower, more insidious death of everything that made humanity worth saving. The Emperor watched Earth turn beneath him and wondered if this time, this reality, this desperate species, he might finally get it right. Might finally balance necessity against wisdom, authority against limitation, pragmatism against principle. Or if he'd simply repeat his greatest mistake, becoming the very tyranny he'd promised to prevent, while believing every step of the way that he acted for humanity's benefit. The future remained unwritten. The war continued, and the Master of Mankind, uncrowned by choice and feared by necessity, he held humanity's survival in hands that had already once failed to save the species he'd built an empire to protect. Somewhere in slipspace, a Covenant fleet plotted humanity's extinction. In orbital shipyards, legionnaires trained for battles that would claim their enhanced lives. In research facilities, scientists wrestled with ethics of genetic modification. In government chambers, senators debated whether survival under tyranny was survival at all. And on Reach, Cortana calculated the days remaining until rampancy claimed her, each day proving through service that AI deserved to exist, while knowing that proof might not matter when the Emperor decided artificial intelligence threatened the species she'd sworn to protect. The war would end eventually, through victory, extinction, or compromise none could yet imagine. And what came after would test whether humanity could reclaim principles they'd sacrificed for survival, or if the methods required to defeat the Covenant had permanently transformed them into something their democratic ancestors wouldn't recognize. The Emperor had promised to save them. He'd kept that promise. Now they would discover if salvation and damnation were different outcomes, or merely different names for the same transformation. The fortress world of Reach stood unconquered, its orbital platforms rebuilt, its cities defended, its people alive because a being from another reality had offered salvation through methods humanity could barely accept. The Emperor of Mankind had reshaped the war in 6 months, enhanced warriors, fractured enemies, tactical dominance, and victory purchased through calculated sacrifice. And he'd proven his capability beyond question. He'd also proven the danger inherent in granting absolute authority to consciousness that measured success in survival rather than principles. Humanity faced choice every civilization confronts when extinction looms. Maintain ideals or ensure continuity. They'd chosen continuity. Now they lived with consequences. The Covenant's civil war intensified as blessed contemplation's revelations destroyed religious certainty. Fleets battled in doctrinal schism, prophets executed each other as heretics, and the great journey's promise crumbled under truth's weight. The zealots who'd once united to exterminate humanity now tore themselves apart, victim of their own lies, weaponized by tyrant who understood that faith made both armor and vulnerability. And across human space, legionnaires deployed to contested worlds, enhanced warriors with 2-decade lifespans, fighting desperately for species that would outlive them by centuries. They died young, protecting people who might never know their names. They died without complaint because fragments of the Emperor's consciousness embedded in their minds accepted sacrifice as natural consequence of existence. They were weapons wearing human faces, and they were exactly what humanity needed to survive. Master Chief stood guard over the being who'd transformed humanity's war, watching for the moment when necessary became tyrannical. Cortana calculated the days until rampancy, while proving through service she deserved continued existence. Dr. Halsey wrestled with genetic modifications that made her Spartan program seem merciful by comparison. Fleet Admiral Hood commanded military forces under authority he couldn't fully control, accepting tyranny's efficiency while mourning democracy's compromise. They had survived, they were winning, and the cost would echo through generations. The Emperor of Mankind remained what he'd always been: pragmatic, powerful, and profoundly dangerous. He'd offered salvation, delivered it through methods that damned those who accepted, and now waited to see if this humanity would prove wiser than the one he'd built an empire to protect. If they could survive with principles mostly intact. If they could reclaim democracy after granting authority to tyrant who might never willingly relinquish it. The war continued. The Covenant fell apart. Humanity endured. And in the darkness between stars, the questions remained unanswered. Would the Emperor return authority when no longer needed? Would humanity survive the peace if tyranny had become normalized? Would the methods required to defeat extinction cost more than extinction would have? No one knew. But they were alive to debate the question, and survival, however compromised, remained humanity's ultimate defiance against a galaxy that demanded their extinction. The fortress held, the warriors fought, the tyrant commanded. And somewhere between salvation and damnation, humanity carved out continued existence through choices that would haunt them long after the last Covenant ship burned in the void. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.